recovering alcoholic, and then all my employees are under 18 years old. Both good reasons. Yep. Oh. Robert, how you doing, my brother? Thanks. I'm doing amazing. It's good to see you. I miss you when I don't see you. If you guys would join me in prayer as we go in this evening. Dear Father God, Abba Father, Daddy, Lord, thank you for loving us and sending your Son to die for us. Our faith is in that alone, that cleansing blood that redeems us. So, Lord, thank you, Lord, Holy Spirit, guide us tonight, Lord. I pray that what we do tonight would honor and glorify you, Lord, because this is about you, Lord. You gave us this country, Lord, and you said we could keep it if we become and unite around what you've done. So, Lord, guide us and direct us as we speak tonight. I pray that everyone's speech would honor you, Lord. Be passionate, but love you, Lord. Thank you. In Jesus' name. Amen.
In Jesus' name.
I
Sure. If you, that's fine.
You didn't pledge or somebody else?
Do the pledge, all right. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There you go.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Mike Compton with Ag for Missouri. And how many of you have heard of Dr. Frank before? All right, that's awesome.
Half.
About half.
So I'll do a little bit of intro material.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of material to get to today. He's been working hard to get your data analyzed. On the drive out here, actually, he's working on it. So it'll be very interesting. You'll get to see your own county's data, and it's an open discussion. So if you have questions, just raise your hand and we'll get you taken care of. But given the amount of stuff that he has to show you tonight, I think we'll just start getting going right now. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. That's the other microphone. Good. Yeah.
I'll try and watch for if you have questions and
Okay.
I'm not paying attention, just throw something.
So I'm glad to be in Missouri again. It's been a year since I've been here. I like this state. In the early days of my election work, I came here a lot. They're happy I'm here too. I came here a lot. You have one of my favorite capitals. My second favorite capital is this one. This is in the capital. You can see it's a dome. It's the dome in Wisconsin. And it's a huge dome, of course. And this is a big mosaic in that dome. And it shows a picture of Lady Liberty pointing towards heaven, because that's where we got our inspiration for liberty, right? God dreamed us up with volition. The whole idea is we're supposed to have free will. We're supposed to be able to act on it. So that's good. So she's pointing towards heaven. So that's where our liberty comes from. But with her other hand, she's protecting the ballot box. And that's what you guys aren't doing in Missouri. You dropped the ball big time in your state. It's time for you to step up and take back local control of your ballot boxes. And until you do, your elections are going to be corrupted over and over again. I was just talking to you guys a minute ago, and they were saying, well, gee, Dr. Frank, how come all of our school board elections are going the wrong way? And how come all of our sheriff and county commissioner elections are going the wrong way? Because you're not running your own elections. That's why. If you were running your own elections, you could protect them and they would have integrity. Your elections in Franklin, I'm sorry to tell you, are really, really, really messed up. And I'm going to show you some of that data today. But it's not just you. It's every county in your state. And it's because you aren't controlling the elections at the county level. You're letting someone else in some other state control your elections. And that's the problem. So you need to bring it back local. And I'll show you all that stuff. But I just got to first just tell you, I was talking to Jim Kozlowski beforehand. Well, let me say, you have an amazing Capitol building. I've sung up in that arch. You know, my country is of thee. Right, I love to sing, and I'm up there at the top, kind of projecting down through it. That goes everywhere. It's awesome. I've also spoken in this rotunda before to about 500 people. I like your Capitol. It's very beautiful. I wish your legislators would follow the writings that are on the walls. That would be a big improvement if they would just read what's on the walls and maybe act according to that. So I don't want you to think I'm just picking on you, but Missouri, come on, you guys. You guys are one of the most MAGA states, one of the most conservative states in the country. What's wrong with you? Stop letting your stupid legislature jerk you around. Put some people in there that are real conservatives that will make the decisions that match you guys. You guys are like amazingly MAGA. I was just running the calculations as I was driving over. You're 4-1 MAGA in this state. On average, your counties vote 4 votes for Trump for every vote for Kamala. Come on, you're conservative. You're America first. Why are you putting rhinos in office? I know the answer to that question. And the answer is because you aren't running. You're letting somebody else who's a Democrat label themselves as a Republican because they can't get elected as a Democrat. And they label themselves as a Republican and they get run as a Republican. They get in office and they act like Democrats. Don't believe me? I have a graph for that. I'll show you in a minute. You guys are in trouble. So anyways, I love your Capitol. You have amazing art on the second floor. My son's an artist, so I took pictures of all this stuff. Just remarkable art. If you haven't seen it, you should go spend some time on the second floor there. And I was here a few years ago, and somebody here in Missouri gave me a nice award, Warrior of the Year. So I've been around. I've actually been on the floor of your house. Formally, I'm a friend of Missouri. It was voted on unanimously on the floor of the house. So I'm a friend of Missouri. So if I'm wagging my finger at you, it's because I'm your friend. I'm your friend. I want you to get your act together. So who's Dr. Frank? For the half of you that haven't seen me before, I grew up in Northern California. My mom was a chemist, and my dad, well, more like physics, and my dad was a class president. So this is where I got my interest in science. This is where I got my big mouth. And like my dad has a funny first name. It's Giovanna. I know it's kind of funny. It's Cherokee Indian. I have a lot of Cherokee blood in me. I have a lot more than Elizabeth Warren has. I'll tell you that. So it's hard to say that. So Douglas G. Frank, that's the G. And I always tell people it's Cherokee Indian. It means big black horse. It's actually a 3-word scale. Well, not a big black horse. And I was just telling people, just call me Stud. It's way easier. But I grew up on an Angus ranch and it's on the coast there. And so I'm a farm boy. So as we're driving out here on your bumpy roads, I think we were talking about that last night on Rob Carter show. The railroad tracks were smoother than the roads. It was pretty bad out there. Mike was saying we didn't need to worry about a speed limit because you couldn't go fast. It was so bumpy. Anyway, I like Missouri. It's beautiful here. I think you are my kind of people. I was asking her, what if I bought 100 acres? Could I move here? She told me, and he told me how much Amy told me I got to have some money, but if I could buy 100 acres and get a farm going, I would love to do that here. But anyway, what happened to me is in junior high, after 8th grade, I was driving the hay truck downtown because you were allowed to drive when you were young, on the farm. And I noticed they were closing down the library and you put out all the books nobody ever checked out. And they put out the Feynman lectures on physics. And I bought those books for $1 a piece. That collection is worth $1,500 today. But I read them that summer, and I've been a physicist ever since. I've been addicted to physics ever since then. I went to school in Santa Barbara. I also played in the symphony. That's not me in the symphony, but I played tuba in the Santa Barbara Symphony all through college. When you're a college student, you do anything for money, right? You got to make a living. So I played in symphony, and I got my PhD there. I'm a musician. And that I've done that many years. After I got my PhD, I went out to Ohio because as a young professor, I was given a really nice grant. The governor of Ohio was looking for budding young scientists, and he was going around identifying them and bringing them to the state. And I got $1 million grant to do my research. It was pretty awesome for a young professor. That's a lot back in 1980. So I went there, and it turned out really well for me. I made a major scientific discovery. And I got featured on the cover of the leading journals in the world, got nominated for a Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and I have 60 scientific peer-reviewed publications. So the reason that's important for you to know is I'm a real scientist, okay? And that is my gut. That's my soul. I love I love analyzing numbers and modeling numbers. That's what physicists do, and making predictions. And so all along for decades, I've been modeling elections since 1980. And I predicted every election, every presidential election until 2020. I even predicted Trump in 2016, 13 months ahead of time when there were 17 people in the primary. And everybody's like, how are you doing this? And it's like, Fourier transforms and differential equations, and that's a whole other topic, which I won't get into, but that's how I'm doing that. But in 1996, I just couldn't stand academics anymore. It was too woke for me. I was at the University of Cincinnati, and if you have to know something about Cincinnati, Mark Twain talked about Cincinnati. He says when the end of the world comes, he wants to be in Cincinnati because it's always 10 years behind the time. So, and so, you know, if I was leaving it because it was too woke in 1996, I'm a pretty conservative guy. I tend to be some of them amongst the most conservative person in the room at any given time. So that's me. I just couldn't stand academics. Went into business for myself, did pretty well. I don't live very far from Springfield, and you heard about Springfield during the debate between.
Don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
You
They're
remember
eating
this?
the cats. They're eating the pets.
You remember that? So that was a problem for us because the animals were all exiting from Springfield. They were buying. But once Trump got into office, then everything's okay. He's got things under control. We're all good. I'm married to my lovely high school sweetheart, 44 years now. We have 3 beautiful kids. And my oldest daughter, Nellie, she's more famous than me in Ohio. She has Down syndrome and everybody loves her. She's the cutest, funniest, friendliest kid you ever met. But she knows how to vote properly.
Hey, Nelly,
Yeah,
your shirt says vote Amish. What does that mean?
they say all paper.
All paper. That's how we vote, all paper. She votes in the primary last year, and that's a picture of her and her vote Amish shirt on the back and says, ask me how. And so, how do you vote Amish? She says, all paper. No machines. That's the idea. So even she knows election integrity, right? She knows, and she has some limits because of her handicap, but she's awesome. I just was FaceTiming with her as I was driving over here, and she can't wait to see me tomorrow. It's going to be fun. It's like having a permanent 9-year-old daughter. It's like my princess. She, 29-year-old woman, she looks like a woman, but she'll like run across the room and leap into my arms and wrap her legs around me just like a little child. It's awesome. So, that's great. So I'm a modeler, like I said. I model all kinds of stuff. I model climate, I model sunspots, populations. I was modeling COVID. I was modeling vaccine risk. That's what got thrown off the internet. Basically, I have a graph for everything. I like to analyze, and then I like to take large amounts of data and find a simple way to explain it so people will understand it. And I think that's what you're going to see today. I'm going to show you your own data in a way you can understand it. It's my favorite thing. I don't just study the surface of things. I like to get to the bottom of it. I like to make it easy for everybody to understand. All right, so that's fine. All right, I think I've had enough jokes. All right, let's get going here. Oh, since it's Sunday, I don't mind mentioning this. I also been touring the country for about 20 years, giving talks about science and faith. People think there's a conflict there, and there's no conflict at all. But people are told that by secular society. So I like setting the record straight. I've been doing that for years. And just to give you one little example of what that's like, I like talking about the miracles in the Bible. And everybody always skips over this first miracle Jesus did, the wedding at Cana. Oh, big deal. He converted water to wine. No big deal. Let's get on to the other ones. And I'm like, slow down right there. Just a minute. Let's look at this miracle. So if you have water, that's H2O, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. If you have wine, that's mostly water, but it's got ethanol in it. That's what makes wine fun. It's got the ethanol in it, right? It's C2H5OH. Okay, so how do you get carbon atoms from oxygen atoms? That's a nuclear reaction. And you can do the calculation. It's 4 Hiroshima bombs worth of energy for him to do that miracle. That's a serious miracle. Everybody kind of just glosses over that. Everybody talks about, oh, he raised somebody from the dead. There's no big deal to that. Little electricity, you can raise anybody from the dead. But water to wine, no, that's a serious miracle. So I enjoy talking about science and faith, and I show people, what the world is really like. I was in Korea, so that's why it's in Korean on top. All right, let me just talk about Korea for a minute. So I'm known around the country as an election expert. And so what happened is, I'm going to bring up a different presentation real quick here. Here we go. Shift F5. Sorry. Okay. The former Prime Minister of South Korea came to CPAC this year. And he gave a 10-minute speech. This is his translator. And he said, we're in trouble in South Korea. We need America to come help. We're in trouble. So Mike Lindell called me about a month later and said, you're going to get a phone call from somebody. It's a funny number. I want you to take it. And so I took the call. It was from Jennifer. She's the translator. And she said, we have an election fraud team here in South Korea, and we want you to be part of it. We need your help on it. And so I said, okay. So we got on a Zoom call. They're hiding identities on purpose because that country is now communist. And if you are known for this, you can go to prison. Okay. So anyway, so this is the head of the team, Chijian is his name, and her. So we did a Zoom call together and we talked for several hours and I was pretty impressed. They have a really good election integrity team there, but they wanted my help. And so I agreed to come, and it was funny because the next day they came out with a commercial and I didn't even know they were going to make this commercial.
And if Trump doesn't win,
And
this will be the last real election in America.
sorry, and I didn't need to do that. Okay, so what happened is they're talking about the U.S. Republican of Korea team. That's me and them. And they're advertising it all over the country, but they hid my identity in this. So what happened is when I arrived at the airport, they had me come in plain clothes, not all patriotic. I usually dress, have a bow tie with American flag and stuff like that. Low key, they brought me in under the radar. And the first thing Jennifer said to me is, oh, Dr. Frank, I apologize that we don't have 1,000 people here greeting you. What? Yes, because she felt bad that, this American hero in their minds is coming to town and they don't have a big reception for me. But they did give me flowers, and they had about 24 podcasters. They have a very active podcaster society. Everybody is podcasting everything all the time. So it's interesting. So they did do that. I arrived with Morse Tan, who is a former ambassador appointed by Trump in 2018. And he, from America, and he also arrived under the radar. We arrived at the same time. The police tried to arrest him when he came in because he'd been there a year ago, but he had papers that basically escaped that. He's now under a travel ban. He may not leave the country. An American citizen right now is trapped in South Korea. He may not leave. And we're trying to bring attention to that so that maybe we can get a little intervention from DC to help out. We already called the embassy. They won't even return our calls. We thought about getting them out through Camp Humphreys, the largest military base offshore in the world. Our military base is in South Korea, up near the North Korea border, up near the 38th parallel. They won't touch it. It's too politically charged. The country is having an amazing event happening right now and nobody knows about it. And I think that's because the media is suppressing it, just like they do here. Just like they do here. So anyway, that happened. And, I wasn't expecting it. I thought I was going over there to be, all analytical, hiding in the cubicle, doing all my fancy data algorithm stuff. That's what I thought I was going over there to do. But I was like, I represent to them America coming to the rescue. I didn't know that. I thought I was just going over to work with a team. So that was interesting because everybody wanted my autograph and it was quite interesting. So what happens, I joined up with their election fraud team. This is they made all these signs and everything because we have this team now, this joint investigation team. And I was with the Prime Minister and his wife. They have the Freedom and Innovation Party. It's a new party that started a few years ago because the old party that he was head of was very much like our Republican Party in America. And it became corrupted. And so he said, I don't want to be the leader of this party anymore. So he separated and started a new party. Very interesting. So this is kind of our group photo when we were there at party headquarters. So they have an interesting law in that state. During an election period, they have early voting. And then for 2 days, on Friday, Saturday. Then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, nothing. And then Wednesday, they have in-person voting on Wednesday. That's the way they run their election. During that period of time, you're not allowed to talk about elections. It's against the law. So Morris Tan and I, we each held press conferences because we're not citizens, so we're not bound by the law. So we held press conferences and talked about what was going on. We were on television with their most popular television program in the country, talking about what was going on. And this was an eye opener to me because this guy, Hung Gil was his name. The first question he asked me was, when is the U.S. military going to come over and rescue us? That blew me out of the water. I was not expecting that question. So in other words, I went over there expecting to be a data analyst working with the election fraud team, but actually they're in way worse shape than I had any idea. And it was like an eye-opening experience for me, and I had to learn the whole system. What's happening is I was there before the early voting, so we were traveling around the country, and I visited this building called where they have AWEB, the Association of World Election Bodies. And I know you probably never heard of that, but it's basically the election fraud international cartel. And it's based in South Korea, and it's right not far from the border of North Korea. It's basically China's export hub to export election fraud around the world. In fact, the ballots that were seized in Maricopa were from AWEB. The ballots that were seized outside of Detroit, 1 million fake driver's licenses, 1 million fake ballots were seized outside of Detroit by the FBI. They came from AWEB. This is like the election fraud cartel of the world right here, started by Soros and funded by USAID for many years. Last year, Trump cut back USAID and cut their funding really bad, so they had to downsize. They're in a smaller building right now. But what was interesting is I was just learning their system. I didn't know what I was doing. And when I took this selfie of myself, and people who track me know what I do. I post selfies of myself wherever I'm at. So kind of people follow, what the Johnny Appleseed election charities do. And I just want people to know what I'm doing all the time. Guess what happened? The next day, I'm on the cover of they only have one conservative publication in the country. That's this. But you need to know the significance of this. Nobody in the country is allowed to mention AWEB. It's like using the N-word. You're not allowed to say it. Nobody's allowed to say it. So for me to take a picture and post it and then put on, this is like now everybody, the buzz is about Dr. Frank in South Korea. It's a big deal. So yeah, I'm trying to have you understand what happened to me so that you understand what you need to do because it's big. All right. So anyway, so that happened. Now, 5 years ago, January of 2021, Mr. Lindell made a movie called Absolute Proof. And you may have remembered that. Within like a week, 150 million people had seen this movie. I just want you to look at something here for a minute. What he was doing in this animation in the movie is he was showing communication coming from two places in Asia into America. Guess what those two places are? Huawei, China, and AWEB in South Korea. And guess where those are landing? Right in your state. And we have those recordings, and that's what Mr. Lindell's first conference was about at the Cyber Symposium. He was talking about, we have all these recordings from all around the world showing that there's election fraud happening in our country, election manipulation, and guess where it's based? I didn't even connect the dots until I was there and saw AWEB, and then wait a minute. This is AWEB. This is the election fraud cartel manipulating our elections in America. In Missouri. How do you like that? How do you like them apples? So that was a pretty big deal. And if you don't believe me, you can look, last year, Kash Patel in June, he announced that the FBI had seized 1 million fake driver's licenses and 1 million fake ballots made in China, shipped from AWEB into America outside of Detroit. This is just one of several examples where we have direct evidence that China is interfering in our elections. And it's not just China proper, it's also through their export hub in South Korea. It's a big deal. So that's a pretty interesting thing for me to walk into that and to kind of have firsthand knowledge. Now, they have something there called the National Election Commission. It's kind of like our EAC in America, where it's the Election Assistance Commission that monitors elections in America from the federal level. But it really is kind of impotent here. There, it's like the government. Whoever controls the elections controls the country, and they are really corrupt, and they are controlling the elections. So I visited all the different places. I became educated. I don't have to get into that. I want to get one of the things. So then the early voting started. So what we had done is we had placed people outside of each voting precinct with clickers, and they're counting the numbers of voters going in. And then we were watching the number of votes coming out. And so I made this graph. It's in Korean, but this is the number of people that went into a polling place. And here's the number of people who were reported voted in that polling place. Does that sound familiar? Huh. And it was interesting. So that's what I was doing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. During the election, I was tracking, I was doing what I thought I was going to be doing. And I was producing these graphs for every precinct, analyzing the provinces. Think of South Korea as the size of Indiana, divided into counties. That's the provinces. It's about like that. They have 50 million people live there, about 44 million voters. They don't have as many kids there as we hear. They're like only 15% of people under 18. So anyway, that's what I was doing. But then something interesting happened. This is like amazing. So I've been doing this 25 out of 30 days a month every year since December of 2020. And I have learned something. I have learned that when you give yourself to God and you let Him control your life, He will use you in a mighty way. And it's like I have been in the middle of every mess there is. And I didn't plan to be there. And so it's easy to be humble because I have nothing to do with it. I mean, you heard about Tina Peters, right? Guess who set that up? That was me. You know, or you heard about Maricopa. Guess who was the peer reviewer on that? You heard about Matt DePerno and Bill Bailey in Northern Michigan, Antrim, Michigan case. Guess who's in that case? It's like I'm in the middle of every mess in the country except Georgia, which I'm glad I wasn't in the middle of that. All right. But anyway, so what happens is we're doing all the analysis, and I'm ready to go. It's on Wednesday, election day. And we were visiting one of the precincts. And you have to understand how South Koreans live. They live vertically. They don't have houses like we do, all spread out. There'll be like 10, 50-story buildings all grouped together, and they all live like in a pack. And then there'll be like a park and a community center, and that's the way they live. And so we were down at the community center watching the voting and paying attention to what was going on. And about midway through the day, they ran out of ballots. And the people called the NEC and said, we need more ballots. We're all out of ballots. And the NEC said, no, we already sent you enough. You should have enough. So we're just going to come and collect the ballots you've already got. And the people said, no, we're missing tons of ballots. What had happened is in the early voting, a bunch of people had voted who weren't supposed to vote. A bunch of election fraud. So they didn't have enough ballots for election day, right? So they're saying, we want more ballots so we can all vote. Well, the NEC said, no, we already sent you enough. We're just going to count what you got. And so what happened at that moment, guess who was standing there? Moi. 10,000 people come down out of those towers and surround the little community center. And we told the NEC, we're not giving you any ballots until you give us all the ballots we need to vote. It's that simple, right? Well, and it was pretty exciting that night. Because like we started a movement. It was pretty incredible. You can tell they really like Trump. They are MAGA out there. There are 9 out of 10 people there are pro-America, anti-communism, and they love Trump. I mean, everywhere I went, fight, fight, fight. I mean, everybody there loves Trump. It's pretty impressive. Well, the next morning at 7 a.m., when the numbers had dwindled a little bit, they weren't completely gone, but it's like 24/7. Since election day, November 3rd, June 3rd, they have not stopped demonstrating throughout the country. We have over 1 million people right now in South Korea demonstrating. And where did you hear about that in the media? Did you hear about that on Fox?
Fox News.
Then why are you listening to Fox? You should quit listening to them. They aren't giving you the news anymore. Anyway, so the next morning the police came in, and 400 police came in, and they like made a wedge, and they forced their way through the crowd and took the ballots. And the prime minister was there. I took a picture of him getting smushed as they were doing this. And this could not happen in America. You know why? Because you all be standing there with your repeating rifles, right? This would be a standoff, and you would not capitulate to the government. But they are completely disarmed. 50 million people, not a gun in sight. They're not allowed. So that's why the Second Amendment is so important. Because the Second Amendment is so I can defend myself against this risky guy. The Second Amendment is so that I can protect myself against the government. That's what it's there for. So these people are completely vulnerable and completely at the mercy of their government. That's why they're asking for our help, because they have no recourse. So anyway, so what happens is after he did that, then those 10,000 people went and joined the neighboring precinct. The night when we were doing this, precincts started popping up all over the place saying, yeah, we're out of ballots. Yeah, we're out of ballots. By the next day, we had 40 precincts demonstrating. By the next day, 70. Next day, over 100. Up over now, 140 precincts did not have enough ballots. It's widespread election fraud. And the people know it because they didn't have enough ballots. And the government's saying, sorry, we're going to just count what you got and that's it. So it's like in your face. So here I am going into this thinking I have to be all smart and analytical and do all these fancy graphs and animate everything, make sure everything. The government just handed it to us on a silver platter. All they would have had to do is just give more ballots and everybody would have gone home and that would have been it. But they didn't. They botched it. It was awesome. Okay. So here is what it looks like around Seoul Coliseum with 100,000 people protesting, and guess where I am? Up there with my bullhorn, and I'm the only American there, and I got my American flag bow tie on, and I'm talking on the bullhorn, and I'd be talking to this crowd, and somebody would repeat it, and they would all roar, and then somebody would repeat it, and so it was like a wave going around the building, because I was announcing. It was amazing to be there. It was incredible to be right in the middle of that mess. A couple of nights later, I think that's enough. You get the idea. They're speaking in Korean, and they're saying, we want a re-election. We want a do-over. And we want paper ballots. And we want to do hand counting. Does this sound familiar?
Yeah.
I wonder where they got that, Chad. I'm telling you, it was amazing to be right in the middle of that. It was incredible. But I want you to notice something else. Yeah. Look at all the American flags. I told them if they want America to help, they need to be publicly in support of America. And so about half the flags are South Korean and about half the flags are American. Now, this particular group in Seoul, Korea is 200,000 college students. And they would do that chant for a while, and then they would sing hymns for a while. It was the Christians at the colleges that were doing this. It was doing this demonstration. This was a Christian political demonstration, which is like, how come we don't do that? Interesting that we don't have that problem. What you need to know about Korea is that 140 years ago, we sent Protestant missionaries there, and the whole place had a spiritual revival. They're like a really Christian nation. So it was really interesting to me as a Christian man, as a working election integrity, that I didn't have to keep them separate. It was like all integrated. And there's a reason why it's integrated. Because when we fought in 50 to 53 there in the Korean War, we drove the communists back up into North Korea and into China. The 38th parallel was established as the demilitarization zone. And that war never ended, by the way. It's ceasefire. What happened was the North Koreans slaughtered all the Christians and churches up there. They slaughtered them all. Okay. It's considered treason to be a Christian in North Korea, and they'll execute you. So what's interesting is the people in South Korea know of that risk. And what's just happened to them I skipped part of the story. A year ago, they elected a communist president. They didn't really elect it. It was a fraudulent election. This year, they elected a communist Congress. They call it the National Assembly. Next next month, they've already got the bill and the new constitution that they're going to vote on, and they're going to be a socialist country. It's just about to happen. The churches are afraid. It's an existential threat. So it's not just a political threat, it's an existential threat to the Christianity. So about a third of the protesters out there are Christian churches protesting. About a third of them are college students because they don't like being told the government what to do or not do. By the way, they've all been taken off of X and stuff. The government's shutting down all the communication. And then the third group are the older people, like the 50s and older, because they remember the war and they remember what it was like, and they're afraid of communism. That in-between group, 40s and 50s, that age group, they lean left. You know why? They were educated abroad. Because what happens in that culture, you have one kid, you put all your energy to him, you ship him overseas to get educated, he comes home with a good job, and that's how they make a living. So what's happened is the middle area, they're the ones who lean left. The old ones are conservative, the young ones are conservative, and the churches are conservative. So it's been amazing. All right. So, yes, it's incredible. The NDC had to resign in shame. That was a big deal. That's big for Asians. I think I've done enough. If you want to see what it was like for me, I've posted live updates every day during the event on Lindell TV, and you can go on there and you can watch what's happening. So it was pretty fun to see. All right, the last day I was there, the NIS director, National Intelligence, it's like the head of their CIA, handed me this book, and what it is it's an English reprint. So it's like I think translated by AI. It's not very good. It's a preprint. It's in English, where he describes how the communists took over their country, and it's a 30-year process. And he says first they took over the academic institutions, then they took over the parties, See what I'm talking about? And as I'm reading this book, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're right down the same path. The exact same stuff's happening to us. Think about what would happen if Kamala was president right now. How would our country be different? Whoa. Okay, would the J6s be out? Would Tina Peters be out? You see where I'm going with this? We are on the cusp of that. So I came back to America after this, like ready to shake everybody by the collar. Wake up, this is happening to us. So I asked a pastor friend of mine to pray for me. I need temperance, I need patience. But you guys are the first state I came to after that. So you're getting you're the second state. I did Oregon first for 3 days and 4 days, and then I'm here. So I'm starting to calm down a little bit, but I still got fire. All right. So I want you to realize that the same thing's happening here. Now, I first came back to America. I brought this prime minister with me, and we, at Trump International in Vegas, we hit for the Fraud Fighter Conference, and I got him on Bannon so he could describe what was going on. But, he speaks Korean, so he would say something, she would translate it. Then Bannon would ask a question, it would have to be translated. It was like slow back and forth. Bannon said, enough of that, that takes too long, so they had me on the next day. So basically, there's like a 15-minute program I recorded and put on my YouTube if you want to see it. Basically describe everything. So if you want to follow up on it, you can. I just want to finish with one last point. You need to realize, why am I telling you this story? Because it affects you. It's real. This is not just Missouri election integrity. This is global election integrity. And you are being affected by it right here in Missouri. You need to fight this fight, because when you're fighting it, you're fighting a global fight. You're not just fighting a Missouri fight. It's a very important fight. So I was in the car, and this is John. He's one of the most popular podcasters in the country. He was in my limousine with me where they're taking me around. And he says, I want to write a letter to America. I said, okay, great. Took out my pad. Okay, I'm ready to go. What do you want to say? And so I was getting ready to write, and he started dictating, and I was like, stop. I took my phone out and I said, we're recording this.
I have a letter to America. Dear America, I'm a husband and father of three. Well, 140 years ago, you came to our land and you taught us the Bible. So now I'm saved. Thank you. Thank you, America. In 1950 to 1953, you came to our land again. You fought for us. You protected us. Almost 36,000 American soldiers died, and more than 100,000 American soldiers got injured. You came to our land to protect us. You bled and died for us. You bled and died instead of us. Thank you. So I'm alive. And still, you're in our land. You're still protecting us. Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't thank you enough. My brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers in America, in Christ, thank you and love you. From now, we're not going to just ask for help. We want to fight for you now. America is the strongest country, but America is fighting a lonely fight. You have your family, brothers, and sisters here. From now on, we want to fight for you. America has to be stronger and wealthier. We want to make America stronger and wealthier and greater to protect people, protect the world, to protect freedom of faith. And thank you. So please help. It could be your words, military, finance. Give me some weapons so we can fight for you. Fight for freedom. Fight for freedom of our faith. Thank you. Love you, America.
They've lost their president, they've lost their legal system, they've lost their Congress. They're desperate. They have no recourse. Notice he didn't say, come help us. He said, we're ready to fight. Come fight with us. We need help. So isn't it interesting that the media is a media blackout on this? Nobody knows there's 1 million people in the streets protesting. That should tell you something about our media, that our media are complicit with this. All right. One of the chants that people chanted in English, they would all say, we go together, we go together. They want us to fight with them. And I posted this was at one of the places I was, they see us as the beacon of liberty in the world, protecting their liberty and protecting their faith. They see us that way, but we're corrupt as heck on the inside and we are collapsing, and they didn't realize that. So when I was with them, a lot of times they were like, well, certainly you fix this problem, certainly you fix that problem. And I'm like, no, we have this exact same problem here. This isn't just you fighting for Missouri. This is you fighting for Missouri and America, and because we're stronger, we can defend the world. So how about that? Should that inspire you to work and to fight? I think that should really inspire you. It inspires me to play it. And I think that's enough for you. All right. Well, because I have beginners here, let me just give you one short story, and then I'm going to dive into your county. Okay? So how did I get involved in this in the first place? Well, you might remember after the 2020, oops, no, let me change this display. I've got this messed up here. There you go. So what happened was, after the 2020 election in America, Doug Mastriano asked for an audit in the state of Pennsylvania. You might remember that. Remember Rudy Giuliani was there and Sidney Powell, and they brought in witnesses and they asked for an audit. So the legislature agreed to do an audit, Senate and House. And I got a call the next day from Kathy Barnett in Montgomery County. Montgomery County is a county with about 500,000 voters. And she called me and said, something's wrong with their election. Would you please look at it? And she knew I was a modeler because of my COVID work. So I downloaded all the data, made a model, and I started finding anomalies and predicting and finding fraud. And sure enough, I actually found a bunch of fraud in the 2012 election in that county. And then 3 times as much in 2016. And then we got to 2020. And I could talk about that for days, but I don't want to right now. I just want to tell you one story, because you'll understand something about your state if I tell you this story. So what I noticed is right before the election in 2020, and about 6 weeks before, in a county with 500,000 people, 500,000 voters, the voter rolls grew from 500,000 to 550,000 in 1 minute. I have all those data. I had subpoena power through the legislature. I was part of their audit. 500,000 to 550,000. It was actually 50,001. Exactly. I knew everybody's name and address and everything. Every one of those people voted to the one. 6 weeks later, every one of them were removed from the rolls. And that was surprising to me. So I called Russ Diamond, he's on the House side, and I said, I want to talk to Secretary Buchwald. So we got her on the phone. I had all my graphs laid out, all my numbers. I was ready to go because I was going to take her to task. And I said, why are you removing these 50,000 people? She said, because they moved away. And that completely caught me flat-footed. I never in a million years expected that answer. 50,000 people were added 6 weeks before the election. They all voted and then they all moved away. That was not at all what I expected. So I said, I was a little flustered and kind of caught off guard. So I said, well, thank you very much. I'll look into that, and hung up. That was the end of the call. So I started looking these people up, and sure enough, she was right. They had all moved away. But they had something in common. They'd all moved away 10 years earlier or more. And so I downloaded the logs for their state voter registration system, and I noticed that there were NGOs around the state. There were about 32 that we found then. We're up to about 80 now. NGOs, non-government organizations that had access to the voter rolls. And what they were doing is they were going into the past, finding old copies of the voter rolls and putting those voters back into the rolls. And then since they're not going to vote because they're not really there anymore, they would cast a ballot using that name. And then what would happen is after the election, the state would do voter roll maintenance. And they were using the post office records. And anybody who had moved away 10 years or earlier, they were taking off the rolls automatically. That's what was happening. So think about it. It's a perfect way to cheat. Put in names that you know are not going to vote. You stuff a ballot using that name, and the state cleans up after you for you. It's a pretty nice little setup, huh? And it wasn't just in one county; it was all over the state. So my first big shock as a scientist coming into this was the fraud is real. We tried. In fact, we knocked on 1,600 doors to confirm, because I always do another experiment. Scientists do. We do experiments to check, make sure I was on target. We knocked on 1,600 doors, found exactly what we expected to find. So we brought that information. So my first big shock is it's real. My second big shock was when I showed it to the committee, they said they weren't going to do anything about it. They said, okay, we're going to hold a series of public hearings starting the second week in January. I'm like, what? You can't wait that long. We got to decertify the election now. This is like the second week in December. You got to decertify it because Trump's going to nullify the whole election. We got to do a do-over. This thing is totally corrupted. We had hundreds of thousands of fraudulent ballots we found in Pennsylvania. And so, but they said, sorry, that's not the way government works. So I was pretty frustrated with them. So I didn't talk to them for about a week. I was mad. So during that week, I downloaded all the data from Pennsylvania, from Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Colorado, because it was available online and I could get it. And I had already written all my computer software, all my models. So I began modeling it and found the same stuff going on in those states. So I flew down to Florida. There's an urgency here because it's in December before the inauguration, before the election is certified. And I'm trying to find a state that will step up and decertify, and Trump will not allow the election to go forward. The Senate will stop the election. Because I flew down to Florida, met with Secretary of State. He wasn't going to deal with it. Flew up, met with DeSantis in his office. I didn't meet with him. I only met with his subordinates, but still, they were not interested in fixing it. So my first shock was that the fraud is real. My second shock was that the legislatures, even Republican legislatures, would not deal with it. That was a shock to me. Then the third big shock to me was we had 4 Supreme Court cases from Montgomery County to the Supreme Court. You might remember there were 4 Supreme Court cases from Pennsylvania. I was in 2 of them. And in late February, they rejected all the cases standing. And so I remember walking upstairs talking to my lovely bride, and I said, honey, we've lost our country. Because the legislatures aren't going to fix it, the courts are not going to fix it, and our election was totally stolen from us. We've lost our country. Kind of like I felt in South Korea 2 weeks ago that they've lost their country. Next day, I got a call, from Mike Lindell, and he says, I'm producing a movie. It's going to be called Absolute Interference, and I want you to be in it. I heard about your work in Pennsylvania. So I flew down there to the studio, and I started showing him my work that I had done in Pennsylvania and how I could go state by state and make all these predictions because I had reverse engineered how they were cheating. And he was so excited. He says, I'm going to make a whole movie just about you. When he started filming, he said, stop everything. We're going to start over. We're going to film Dr. Frank. For 3.5 hours, we filmed. 3.5 hours is a lot of time with Mr. Lindell. He is a talker. And I'm a talker too. So boy, oh boy, that was an exercise. But he's a wonderful man. I love him dearly. I'm just happy to play a little playfulness with him. But anyway, that's a 1-hour movie. And then he made another movie, the one he intended to make, and I'm about the first fourth of that movie, about half an hour is also more of my work. So suddenly now in the country, about 15, 20 million people knew who I was. And suddenly I started getting messages from everybody around the country. Dr. Frank, we have problems with our elections. Please come help. And I had a stack in my desk of 70 messages from people all around the country. Please come help. Please come help. And it's like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know what I was getting into. So I prayed about it and said, okay, God, if you're sending me, I'm going. I figured it's better to go to Nineveh the first time rather than get swallowed up by a fish and on the beach. So I'm going to go. All right. So I went upstairs and told my wife, honey, I'm going to set aside my income for 6 months. We're going to save the country and I'll be back to work. Yeah, that was a long time. All right. So I went back and I looked at my desk and I said, okay, now what do I do, God? I've got 70 messages. How do I know which one's important? How do I pray? I don't know. So I prayed again. Okay, God, whatever you put in front of me, that's what I'm doing. So the top message was from Tony Shute in Pennsylvania. Called her. We started out at the Vogue PA. It's been a very successful group there on election integrity. I was good. Hung up with her about 30 minutes later, and my computer went bleep. There's a message from somebody in Washington, state of Washington. So, okay, God, you put it in front of me. So I took out my phone, called her up called it. He said, yeah, Carol Lee, yeah, this is Dr. Frank calling. Suddenly I hear all this screaming, yelling on the other side. It sounds like a mass murder or something. And I'm like, are you okay? Are you all right? What's going on? What's going on? She says, oh, Dr. Frank, we're at a prayer meeting in church, a women's prayer meeting. We're all in a circle on the floor on our knees. And we just prayed and asked God to have Dr. Frank call us. So you can imagine when I called her right in the middle of my prayer meeting. It was pretty good. Good answer to prayer, right? I got to tell you, that's the way my life has been. I'm like right in the middle of this stuff. And it's cool to be at the whim of God. It's kind of fun. He's always put me in the right place. It's pretty fun. But anyway, so that's been my life ever since. But then Mr. Trump learned about me and he asked me to be his first keynote speaker at his first rally after he was out of office. And he said, Dr. Frank, explain to the world how they stole my election. So now millions of people all around the world and America know who I am and what I'm doing. But in those days, I was mostly talking about math. I was showing you that the elections could not possibly be real, and I was using math. Why? Because I can't go in every state. I only just got started. So I was showing the math for every state, so they made memes about me, and I thought it was pretty funny. Dr. Frank McMathigan, because I was mostly teaching math. I was showing people how statistically it couldn't be possible. New Yorker did a hit piece on me. And it's funny to see yourself in cartoon. But that's the way I was perceived, just going around teaching everybody math and statistics. And yes, I've been now in 48 of the states, all over the country. I've probably given 1,100 public presentations like this. So it's been an amazing journey for me, crazy actually. And I always say God doesn't waste a thing. So I got this nickname, the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity. Where did I get it from? The LA Times. Guess where all the crap's happening right now in LA? And guess where I'm going next week? And so I already have credibility there. I've already been featured in there. Everybody knows about Dr. Frank. Guess who's coming to town? And guess what else is so interesting about LA? It's the largest settlement of Korean people outside of South Korea. And Pastor Cheon, who's a Korean pastor there, was one of the gubernatorial candidates. And I got to know him really well because Laura Logan and I led a debate there where he was featured. And so I spent a lot of time in green rooms with him. God doesn't waste a thing. Guess where I'm going? So we're going to make a big stink in LA. Watch the news. If it makes the news, if it's not suppressed. If it's not suppressed. Exactly. You're going to have to be on X or something like that. Although X is stifled. Yes. So I think I've given you enough introduction, and I think I've kind of caught you up on my last 6 years. There's one thing I left out, and that's that I had to learn along the way that people think they know what's wrong with their elections, but they don't. They think they know, but they don't. And they have all these different solutions that they're proposing to fix the elections. Oh, we got to get rid of machines. Oh, we got to have photo ID. Oh, we need the SAVE Act. All these different things. That's wrong. All those things are wrong. That's not how you're going to fix your elections. Or repair your elections. That's not the problem. So I just want to tell you a little story. It was in 2021. I was traveling around the state with Ann Kelly. You know who Ann Kelly is? One of your legislators. So I have a picture of her with me and her together. There she was. We're traveling around the state together. And it was right after the Cyber Symposium in 2021. And she had attended. And we were still kind of new at this. And we thought that the way to fix this problem was to meet with the clerks, to meet with the Secretary of State, to meet with your legislators, and show them the problem, and then they would fix it. So I spent about a week driving around, and we were not having any success. It was Thursday, and I met with, I don't want to say his name. You know who it is. We met with the head clerk of your state at the time. Okay, Shane Shilbert. We met with Shane Shilbert. Okay, and we're in his office. And it's a round table, small round table, and he's sitting here, and I'm sitting here, and Ann Kelly's sitting here. And as soon as we sit down, he immediately launches into a discussion about how secure their elections are. And he says, oh, Dr. Frank, we have the most secure networks in the country. Our machines are perfectly secure. You don't have to worry about it. And about 10 minutes or 5 minutes, he's just ranting about that. And finally, I just said, stop right here. I said, I'm not here to talk about your machines. Oh, what are you here to talk about? I said, I'm here to talk about your voter rolls and how they're being used to stuff ballots in your elections. He said, oh, really? So I brought my laptop out. I started showing him all the data. The reason I'm sitting down is because I'm going to imitate him right now. After about 10 minutes, this is exactly what he did. He goes, yeah, we know we have tens of thousands of ballots being stuffed on our elections. Just like that. And Ann Kelly's mouth drops open. What? What? She says, if you know this, why aren't you telling the clerks? His answer was, if we told the clerks, oh, by the way, I have this memorized. I will never forget this as long as I live. This is a word for word book. He says, quote, if we told our clerks how many ballots were being stuffed in our elections, the whole state would blow up and everyone would lose faith in our elections, unquote. You think? Okay. And then what was it? I mean, that was bad. But what made it even worse is that then he went on this 20-minute rant about how he knew all the other fraud that was happening and how it was happening. It was like a point of pride to him that he knew where all the fraud was happening in the state. And Ann Kelly and I are just sitting there in horror, listening to all these stories. So that was Thursday morning around 11 o'clock. Next day, I'm in the Capitol building, meeting with Eric Schmidt, your Attorney General at that time. And I'm there because I have a copy of the lawsuit that Mr. Lindell had me going around getting signatures. We're taking a lawsuit to the Supreme Court. So I'm sitting there with the lawsuit. We sit at the table. I pull my phone out, and the lawyers do their legal mumbo jumbo for 30 minutes or something. And then it's my turn, and I'm about to show him fraud, Eric Schmidt, and the fraud that's in your state. And he said, "That's okay, Dr. Frank, you don't have to show me." He says, "We already know we have tens of thousands of ballots being stuffed in our elections." Obviously, he'd spoken to Shane Schiller because they had the exact same sentence the day before. In other words, he knows. And so I said, "Well, if you already know, then here, sign off and I'll get out of your hair." And he goes, "No, we've decided we're not going to sign that." "What do you mean not going to sign?" He says, "Well, we have higher priorities right now. We've got our legal priorities." And I said, "Fortunately for you, it doesn't require anything from you. All you got to do is sign. We've already got the attorneys. We're going to be prosecuting the case. We just want you to sign on because you have legal standing as the Attorney General of Missouri." Nope, wouldn't sign it. So that was pretty disappointing to me. I just want you to realize a lot of people think that the right way to fix this problem is to gather evidence and go to the Secretary of State. Gather evidence, go to your AG. Gather evidence, go to Denny Hoskins. And you think that that will fix the problem. That will not fix the problem. They already know, and they're not addressing it. Why are they not addressing it? Keeps them in control. It keeps them in control right now.
But they've been told not to.
Yes, correct. And I can tell you so many stories like this. They've been told not to address it. It's like the third rail of politics. Any legislator or any politician that stands up for election integrity is eliminated. By the way, they're eliminated not by the Democrat Party. They're eliminated by the Republican parties in each state. I can tell you stories in Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma. The Republican parties in those states are eliminating anybody who talks about election fraud in their legislatures. That's another huge breakthrough in my thinking. I was thinking Republicans are the good guys, Democrats are the bad guys. Wrong. Your party's been infiltrated. It's not what you think it is. Okay, I'll give you an example. In Kentucky, they have 105% of their people registered. Okay. And they're a Republican state. Oregon has 105% of its people registered, and it's a blue state. It doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. Whoever's in control is keeping control. That's the situation we're in. So I don't want you guys to be mad at Mr. Hoskins. He and I were on the phone about a year ago. I was in the car. I think it was Amy and Mike driving me back to the airport. I was in the car and he called me and he says, "What happened to all the people?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He says, "They all got up and elected me and now they all disappeared." It's kind of like the Trump right now. We call it the Trump slump. Everybody elected Trump, and so now everybody's expecting him to fix it. Wrong. You're the government. You got to start acting like it. We just shouldn't be looking to them to fix it. We fix it. They just represent us for other things. Now, along the way, you notice we've been doing all kinds of proofs. And I could give you a long talk on whether or not your machines are secure or not, but I don't need to because your own Secretary of State admitted that you have vulnerabilities. Okay. Now, wait a minute. How can your machines have vulnerabilities if they aren't connected to the internet? And that should give you pause, right? But all your clerks think their machines are not connected to the internet. But I promise you, I can log into every one of them. They are completely hackable. And they don't even know themselves that's the situation. And I guess.
And unfortunately, because of the Uniparty and because of some cowardly Republicans that would not do everything in their power in order to get IP reform passed, we did not get it passed today.
So that's important to me. I made a special trip to Missouri to read your election integrity bill a couple years ago. And I spent about a day and a half redlining it, marking it, and Lisa Panette, she and I were sitting over there in Linda Matush's house, and we were working our butts off. That original bill was gutless. We gave it teeth. We turned it into the committee. They gutted it, and what went to the floor didn't even pass. And it was gutless. So your own legislature is not interested in fixing your elections. And I don't understand that. You guys are like 4-to-1 MAGA on average in your counties. How come you can't do election reform? The answer is you don't have people that represent you. Just like in South Korea, 9 out of 10 people are anti-communist, but their Senate and their House and their president, that's all communist. How can that happen? Corrupt elections. You have to take back your elections. Until you do, you're in trouble. I can go on and on. I just don't want to belabor that point. I think I've already made my point pretty good. All right, let's jump into some data for your state. Oh, before I do that, I'll show you this. So, as I always show people, yeah. Sorry, I got this backwards. I gotta fix this setting somewhere. It keeps swapping the view. So there's a group called online, the freedomindex.org. And what they do is they track the voting of everybody in Congress and at the state legislature level. And they score them. How do they vote and whatnot? And by the way, Amy and Mike, you guys had that little video showing that your own legislatures are hiding their votes from you guys? Come on, this is the show me state.
The lights went out.
And they're not gonna show you how they vote. Now, did they represent you or not? See, in other words, you guys are in bad shape. You need to wake up and aggressively address this, or it's just going to get worse. But anyway, this is for the whole country. This is the Congress, Senate, House in D.C. And what it is if a person in Congress always votes consistently with the Constitution, they get a 100% score. If they never vote consistently with the Constitution, they get a 0% score. And the blue dots are Democrats and the red dots are Republicans. And so I just want you to realize that the reason why Trump can't get the SAVE Act passed, the reason why Trump is trying to do reform, but why it's so hard for him is because the swamp is deep and it's full of, there's some defenders, but it's compromised, communists in disguise and communists. They are not going to make it easy. So if you're waiting for Trump to fix it, he's already got his hands full, okay? Now, you want to see your state? This is for 2024. I reversed the axis, but it's still the same idea. You have Democrats, and these are your Republicans. Okay? You want to know why you have trouble in your state? Because Democrats are disguising themselves as Republicans to get elected, and then they act like Democrats. You are in trouble. And you're not alone. Most of the states look like this. We're losing our country because we, the people, aren't taking our responsibility to be in the government. We're giving it away to other people. So anyway, I have a graph for everything. Did you notice? This is like a whole book of data. I condensed to one picture for you. All right. All right. So here we go. Let's talk about your state. So swapping me again. I'm going to change how I do that. Doesn't keep swapping. Okay. So I'm going to show you your state. And I put these up last year. It's on my webpage if you want to go there. And you can download your county graphs. I've got a graph for every county, but let me just show you your whole state, and I'll show you your graph for Franklin here in a minute. So in 1960, in your state, you had about 3.5 million voting age people. And that's just been kind of steadily climbing over time up to about 2024. It looks like a little bit of census correction around 2000. But basically, you're just basically steadily climbing. Voting age people in your state, how many do you have? Now you're up to around close to 5 million, let's say. So it's just a steady growth of your voting age people. This black line is every 2 years, how many people were in your voter rolls. And what you'll notice is back in the 90s, early 90s, you were around 70% of voting age people. And I can tell you from my modeling over the years, over the decades, that's a clean voter rolls. If you have about 70% of your voting age people in the rolls, that's a good clean rolls. Sounds low, I know at first, but trust me, that's a good number. I've been doing this for years. But you notice what happened in your state is it started climbing. The population, it was climbing faster than the population. Why?
Dead people voted.
Because voter, who said that? A for the day. Voter. That's exactly what happened. 1993, it's called the National Voter Registration Act, NVRA. The federal government started giving money to the states to say, look, we want you to start automatically registering people who get driver's licenses, who get welfare, who went to jail, who are foreign citizens, who have children in school. All these automatic ways of registering people to vote went into effect. So your population wasn't growing that fast, but your rolls started growing quickly. That's not the only thing that happened. Also, what happened is the state started keeping a central voter rolls rather than letting the counties keep their voter rolls. If you go in right now and register to vote, your clerk doesn't add you to the voter rolls. Your clerk logs into the state and adds you to the state voter rolls. If you want to delete somebody from the voter rolls, the clerk logs into the state to delete. She doesn't have your own local copy of the rolls. She doesn't do it that way. So I'm going to come back to that, but I just want you to notice that your voter rolls grew. Now it's around 90% plus. So I would say you have about 1 in 5, 1 in 4 of the people in your voter rolls do not belong there. You've got too many people in the voter rolls, and I've got your voter rolls right here. And before we leave today, I'll show you. And you're going to see with your own eyes how dirty your voter rolls are. We're going to look your address up if you'd like. I've got it right here. I'm ready to go. So you'll believe me. It's very motivating when you see your own neighborhood discover it. And a lot of times I look up people, I do this all over the country. I look up their address and they're like, hey, that's the former owner. What do you mean they're still in the voter rolls? You've been there 5 years or whatever. So we'll see what happens. You never know what's going to happen. I'm always kind of sticking my neck out. We'll see what happens. All right. So this is voting age people. And if you think about it, that's not who's eligible to vote. That's an upper limit. Because you have some non-citizens that are 18 and older here as well. People on green cards and officially here. So it's a high number. Then this red line is every 4 years, how many people voted in Missouri in the presidential elections. I could get those data, but I couldn't get the midterms for some reason. But I was able to get the midterms here. So this is every 2 years, presidential midterm, presidential midterm, presidential midterm. How many people are voting in your election? I just want you to notice that your voting suddenly made a big jump right there. You aren't tracking the same. Once you inflated your voter rolls, suddenly you had a big jump in turnout too. That's interesting. Now, what you're going to hear from your party is they're going to say, oh, how horrible. Our people aren't voting anymore. They become disillusioned with our elections. They don't trust our elections anymore. We have the lowest turnouts we've had in decades. You know why they say that? Because they're reporting to you the percent turnout of registered voters. The percent of registered voters who voted. But that's number been inflated. So it makes it sound like you have less turnout. Actually, you have the highest turnout you've ever had. You have plenty of people voting. Too many people voting, I would claim, okay? Too many votes, but it's disguised by the fact because they report your numbers to you as a percentage. I always teach my students, if you ever see a percentage in the media, you need to ask percent of what? You have an inflated voter roll. So we can talk about that, but that's a whole nother topic. I don't want to get too far afield. So I've created a graph like that for every county in your state. And I've posted this online. I went up there last year. But I just want you to notice that some of your counties have more people in the voter rolls than they have people. There's one. There's one. There's another one. Butler, Caldwell. You see what I'm talking about? Cass, Cedar. Why is this happening? It's happening because the local clerk is not in charge of the voter rolls. It's being centrally controlled somewhere else. And right now, it was Eric, and you just got off of Eric, I think, last year, and you're starting to use a new system now, but ERIC is the system that your state was using to clean your voter rolls, and obviously they're not doing a very good job. I just want you to realize I'm not cherry picking. This is a statewide issue. This isn't just your county. This is Franklin, right?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so I think I pulled you guys out. That's Jackson, where I was. Let's find you here. Boone. Where are you, Franklin? Saline, Jackson. I know I pulled you out. Maybe I didn't. There it is. So there's Franklin. So you'll notice that your voter rolls are growing faster than your population. So you have the same malady here. And by the way, I don't want you to run tomorrow and down to the clerk's office and complain at it. It's not her fault. She's using a state system. It's the state system that's the problem. It's centrally controlled. But my goal is to win her over.
Yeah.
One of my goals Ain't gonna happen?
Him.
Him, sorry. 99 out of 10 seem to be sure, so, okay. Our goal is to show him the problem and to put him actually back in control of your goals. I'd like him to run your election, not the state. Because right now the state is running your election. Now, I'll get to that in a minute. But you'll notice you also have the highest voter turnouts you've ever had. There's plenty of voting going on here, but that isn't the messaging you're getting from the Republican Party, is it? They're all saying, oh, our turnouts are all low. No, you have plenty of people. Now, remember, Mr. Lindell made a movie about me, and this is why. Because what I could do is I could go into a state, any state in the country, and I could look at one county. And after I looked at that one county, I could predict every other county in that state. Let me illustrate. So this is for Franklin County. This is for the 2020 election. And the blue curve is your population by age. So it's like your demographics. How many people do you have in each age? So in 2020, the most common age was about 60 years old. Those people are now over here at 65, right? That peak's moved a little bit. So you're probably your most common age is 65 now instead of 60. Okay. But that's the population in Franklin County by age. The black curve is who's registered to vote by age. I have a complete list, so I know everybody's name and age and everybody's address. So I can count them up. So I just count up how many people there are of each, and you'll notice that everybody in Franklin County is registered to vote above age 60. Everybody. And you know that's not true. That's not going to be the case. What's really the problem is it's not getting cleaned up. Your voter rolls are dirty, and this black line should be underneath the blue line, but it's not been cleaned up. Now, the red line shows you who voted in 2020 by age, how many people of each age. So you can see if that black line is supposed to be lower, you've got really good turnouts too. Maybe too high of turnouts. Too many people are voting. That's interesting, huh? But then if you look carefully, there's this light blue line underneath the red line, and that shows my prediction of how many people would have voted in Franklin County in 2020 if I make one assumption. The assumption is every county in Missouri votes exactly the same. And if I make that assumption, I make a 0.999 correlation coefficient. In other words, I can predict this part per million accuracy. It's ridiculous that I can predict it that accurately. Every county. And just so you know, I'm not cheating. Here's another one, Benton County, 0.997. Notice I can predict it, all right? I can show them all to you, but I just don't want to spend time. Cass County, 0.999. What's another one? Boone County. So you notice it doesn't matter whether it's big, small, green, Mexican, Chinese, I don't care. Big, small, rural, urban, every county in the state is predictable. Ridiculously. Why? Because it's centrally controlled. Let me tell you what I mean by central control. Then I'm talking about churn, and I'm going to show you your own voter rolls. What's that?
Jeff City.
Jeff City?
He's controlling it all. Oh, since, yeah.
Well, I don't think it's Jeff City. I think it's something else. So if I were to say, let me bring up what's wrong with our elections. Here it is. So what is wrong with our elections? It's corrupt. It's corrupt, right? So everybody thinks they know, but you don't. What's wrong is in every state in America, every state, elections are centrally controlled by the state. That's what's wrong with our elections. They're centrally controlled by the state. What do I mean by that? So when I was in college back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, we had a central computer on campus. It was a VAX computer. I don't know if some of you remember those things. Remember those days? Exactly. And then around campus, we had terminals. And we called them dumb terminals because they didn't have any software in them, any drives, any nothing. They were just dumb terminals. All they did was communicate with the main computer. Everything was here. Well, guess what? That's the way our elections are today. Everything is centrally controlled in the state. And their clerks are just dumb terminals. And that's not insulting their intelligence. I'm not talking about what functions they do. So, for example, when they want to add somebody to the voter rolls, they don't add somebody to the voter rolls. They log into the state and add somebody to the state. When they want to delete somebody, they log into the state and delete somebody. At the end of the election day, and I do this all the time at Dr. Clerks, I'll say, so tell me about your election. And they describe all the things they do. And then what do you do at the end of the day? At the end of the day, we take that memory stick out of the tabulator and we walk over and we plug it into the EMS system. And what happened? And the data go. So in other words, your clerk isn't even counting anything. Your clerk nothing is happening locally. Everything is being poured into the center. So your clerk is just a dumb terminal. I'm not insulting them. I'm just telling you their function. None of the software is here. None of the counting is here. It's all being done remotely. But the problem is the clerks think they're in charge of their elections. They're doing all these tasks. They've got all these checklists and they're doing all this work and they think they're in charge, but they're not. Okay. And I'm going to show you something that shows that they're not too. But what did Stalin say? Stalin said it's enough that the people know there was an election. It's enough that the people know there was an election. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. People who count the votes decide everything. And when's the last time you counted votes? When's the last time your clerk counted votes? You aren't deciding anything because everything is being done by somebody else, somewhere else. You have to bring it back local. And until you bring it back local, you don't have elections anymore. They are not your elections. So that's why I have the 7 steps, and I'll go over that in a minute. But I want to just show you your own voter rolls for a minute. I'm going to teach you an idea, and then I'm going to show you your voter rolls. So there's this idea. It's called churn. Say that there are 100 people in Franklin County, 100 people, and 10 people move out, and 10 people move in. So you would have had Franklin County, 100 people, 10 people move out, 10 people move in. That's 20 changes. 20 changes out of 100. So I would call that a 20% churn. Your population changed 20%. 10 names out, 10 names in. Well, I can do the same thing for your voter rolls. In fact, I have a bunch of copies of your voter rolls. Let's just talk about that. I'll come back to this in a minute. So I'm going to bring up your county. I think I already opened it. Good, it did. Here we go. Okay. So what I've done, let me go over this summary for a minute. Now, there's a rule in public speaking. You never show a table. So I'm showing you a table. But just don't look at the numbers for a minute. We'll look at the numbers in a minute. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 copies of your voter rolls. I actually have more, but I just kept it on manageable by keeping it small. For Franklin County, I have these for every county in your state, not just Franklin County. And on June 4th of 2017, the voter rolls for Franklin County had 71,342 people in it. And I know every one of their names and addresses and voting history. I've got everything on what's going on with them, all right? So I know every one of those people, okay? A year or 3.5 years later, I don't have any between there. Right after the 2020 election, December, you had 74,422 in the rolls. About half a year later, you had 73,795. Another year later, 75,641. So it's hanging around 76, 77, 78,000 people in your voter rolls. You get it? I know how many of them are labeled as active. I know how many of them are labeled as inactive. So imagine your clerk sitting there day after day, adding people and removing people from the rolls. They know about how many they add and remove. And I like asking clerks, how much time do you spend doing that? Oh, we work hard at that, Dr. Frank. How many do you remove a week? Oh, each one of us might remove 10 people a week or add about 10 people a week. It's a lot. And so I'll say, okay, well, how many a year is that? And you can multiply it out and you can figure. Well, what is actually happening is they're adding and removing tiny numbers. For example, in the last year the last year and a half from September to March of this year, 5,300 people were removed from the rolls and 6,300 were added. So the total number doesn't change much, but it went down and up a lot. And your clerk doesn't know that because your clerk doesn't have her own list. All she's doing is adding and removing a few. She's sort of diddling around on the top, but all this stuff is happening over there somewhere. And whenever I talk to clerks, they always argue with me. No, that can't be true, Dr. Frank. I'm the one in control of my rolls. So what do? Here are the people who were removed. Here are the people who were added. Here are the people that were removed. Here are the people who were added. And then they go, oh, finally, when I force them to admit that this is happening, they say, well, Dr. Frank, that's good. What do you mean that's good? Well, the state's handling all that work for me. That's so much work. How could I do all that work by myself? Well, what are they doing? Oh, the state's removing dead people. They're removing inactive people. They're removing people who move away, except they're not. Okay. And so I say, well, no. For example, let's just look at this last period of time, a year and a half. They removed 3,200 active voters, only 2,129 inactive. Huh. So no, they're not just removing dead, they're removing active voters, more active voters than inactive voters, actually. And that's, 4-1 here, 10-1 here, 100-1 here. They're adding and removing more actives than they are inactives. So let me just give you a picture of that so you'll understand a little bit what I'm saying. It's hard to understand, and I know it's a new idea. Good, we see that. All right. So remember I said that a clean voter rolls should have about 70% of the 18 and older population. That's a clean voter rolls. Got 70%. And over time, say in my example I've given over 4 years, there's going to be some people that die, some people that move away, and that will churn. And that's normal because people die and move away and move around. That's normal to have some churn. It should be a few percent a year. That would be normal. But what's happened is in your state, they've inflated the voter rolls. And how are they inflating the voter rolls? They're inflating them by pushing in people that automatically get the driver's licenses, registration. They're pumping that full. Now, the way your state works is if they put somebody in the rolls who's not really a voter and they don't vote, okay, they missed one federal election, then they miss another federal election. Then what's supposed to happen is your clerk contacts them and sends them a postcard and says, are you still here? And if they don't reply to the postcard, they make them inactive. And then if they still don't vote again, they take them out. So I just want you to realize something. You put somebody in the rolls who shouldn't have ever been there in the first place, and they're in the rolls for 8 to 10 years before you get them out. So what happens is you're constantly pumping the rolls full of people, and then 8 years later, they're taking those people out. So there's like this churn going on top. It gives the credit line of names of people who are not real voters, who are always available that you can use to cheat with. And it's a constant process. It's constantly going on. Remember my Pennsylvania example, they added a bunch of people, they stuffed ballots for them, and they took them out. Well, here, it's a continuous process. It's just always happening in continuously. All right, so I hopefully you understand what I mean by churn. It's not you that's being added and removed. It's these automatic additions and removals. And there's a huge amount of that going on in your state. That's why you have non-citizens in your rolls, because it's automatic. There's no way they're not verifying their citizenship. Now, I want to tell you a story, then I'm going to dive into your data and show your own neighborhoods. So I was up in Washington County, Oregon. I have 25 county teams in Oregon out of 36 counties. And the reason I'm here right now is to see if I can get some teams going here in your state. And Amy and Mike have offered to help me get those teams going. Thank you very much. So before you leave today, make sure to sign up for them if you want to be on a team. We'll get you the data I'm about to show you, and you can find fraud in your own neighborhoods. Okay, I'm going to help you. Do that. I've learned that unless you find your own fraud, it doesn't matter what I say. Okay. So anyway, before I leave this table, I just want to hit a couple of the numbers on it, and then I'm going to show you something. So in your county, since 2017, notice how you can calculate the churn. You can add who was removed, who was added, divided by that number, and you had a 40% churn from June of 2017, 3.5 years later. Did your population churn 40% in 3.5 years? Your voter rolls did. Your voter rolls are churning. Your population is not. When I do the churn across this whole period of time, you have a 95% churn. Your rolls have churned, added and removed as many names as you have totally in the voter rolls. Did your population churn like that? No, your population didn't churn like that. Well, I just did it on the car coming over. Just churn summary. So here I am breaking my rules again. I'm sure I wasn't supposed to click update. Okay, good stuff. I did every county and summarized. The average churn for your state is 110%. Okay? Pick any county you want. Okay? Look at these churns. They're preposterous. Well, one of them was 140%. Which one was down here somewhere? 140% for Platte County. Okay? In other words, is your population churning like this? No. No. But your voter rolls are. And what that does is it gives anybody who wants to cheat all these fresh names they can always be using to cheat with, and the state's just automatically taking them off afterwards. This is a big problem that you have. Okay, so I just Franklin. So you're about the middle, let's say. Well, actually, the middle is 109%, the average. I didn't do the median. I should do what's the median? Sorry, give me a second. Median. Median's 107%. So the median and the average are pretty close. Use statistics people. So it's a little bit better here in Franklin. But what's a neighboring county? Like St. Charles. St. Charles, you have 101%. So St. Charles is a little worse. Somebody on the Rob Cardio show the other day said, oh, yeah, St. Charles is a growing, vibrant community. Everybody always wants to make an excuse, which is why I do all of the counties, because you take away the excuse. No, that's not the issue. Yeah. Why St. Louis? Yeah, because my software crashed on the way over. Oh. And I'll get it fixed here. But that's the problem with real time. Yeah.
So Gasconade County, this is right next door, Blythe County.
Gasconade, G. Oh, Gasconade. There you go, Gasconade. So, sorry about the table. 101.2%.
Then to our north, we've got Warren County.
Warren County to your north. Warren was 137%. So, yes,
I know there's fraud. I've known that for years.
good for you.
But the problem is, why aren't they doing anything about it?
Yeah, the problem is why aren't you doing anything about it? That's my point to you today, is as long as you're waiting for them to fix it, as long as you're waiting for Trump to fix it, ain't nothing gonna happen. It has to be you. And that's why I'm here. I'm gonna teach you what to do. I'm gonna teach you as a community how to do this. I've been doing this all over the country. I see your hand, Jim. And before I leave today, I'll show you that strategy. What do you want to say, Jim?
So 4 years ago, in front of the House Committee here in Missouri that dealt with elections, Dave Schatz, who you all know as the president, was chairman of that committee. And one of the things I told him was, Representative Jackson, 92% of your people in your county are registered. That's right. He says, yeah, that's my county, that's my people. And then committee's done, we dismiss the committee, right then.
But all the counties are like that. That's the problem. It's not just one county. And that's why whenever I do just one county, I always get, oh, we have a special circumstance here. Yeah, I always get that crap. No, you do all the counties and you show every county's got the problem. Okay, and then that's why I did that. Is there's just no, you can't argue anymore. Yeah.
In the 2020 election, we heard stories of people going in to vote, and they were told, oh, you've already voted.
How does that happen?
Yeah, how is that?
That means somebody used their name
Yeah.
and cast a ballot. And that's how the elections are being stuffed. That's my whole point. So a lot of times people say, oh, Dr. Frank, we're going to find election fraud. How are you going to find election fraud? We're going to do a recount.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I always tell them, no, recounts are a waste of your time most of the time. There are a few exceptions. I say, doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counted.
That's right.
If there's stuffed ballots, it doesn't matter how you count them. You can count them by hand. I love Linda Ranch, but counting them by hand ain't gonna fix the problem. Count them standing on one leg, counting with machines, count them. It doesn't matter how you count them. Are they the real ballots from the real people or not? and you have tons of ballots. What did Shane Solar say? Yeah, we know we have tens of thousands of ballots being stuffed in our elections.
Yeah.
Okay? Counting those stuffed ballots with a machine or by hand is irrelevant. I'm not saying the machines are okay. They're not. We need to get rid of the machines. But that's not the only problem. You have lots of problems. That's just one of the 12 problems. So now I'm going to tell you a story from Oregon. So in Washington County, Oregon, I got such great teams up there. In fact, if you go to my YouTube page, I've been posting excerpts there every week. They're going into the county commissioner meeting and reading cases of fraud into the public record. It's awesome. Everybody, we're shaming the county officials who said that their elections were fine. Every week we read multiple cases of fraud into the public record. It's awesome. We've been finding it all over the place. And wouldn't you know it, guess what? We've shamed them into meeting with me. And I just came from a meeting with the commissioners there, because how can they look at their public and say, yeah, all this fraud's okay, we're not going to do anything about it? You're pressuring them by showing actual fraud. It works well. But anyway, so Washington County. Hi, I was visiting them because I've been coaching the teams. And how's it going, guys? Oh, we found all kinds of dead voters. Oh, really? What'd you find? Found a bunch of people who died in 2011 and 2012. A whole bunch of them, about 20. And they didn't vote for in 2016, but they voted in 2018, 20, and 22. And then they were taken out of the voter rolls in 2023. So when people are looking for fraud, a lot of times they'll say to me, oh, Dr. Frank, I've downloaded the most recent copy of the voter rolls and I'm looking for fraud. Too late. The rolls have been cleaned up. You need the historical record to find the fraud in your elections. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show this to you, and we're going to look up your address, is I take the most recent copy of the voter rolls that I have, that's March, and I add back in everybody who was removed. So now I have a master list since 2017 of everybody who's been in your county. You got it? And everybody who's been in and out of the rolls. Now, since you have 100% churn, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the list was 50% bigger than the current list. So it's going to be pretty big. Let me just check that on it. Check that. So 70, let's go out 78,000. How many are in the merge list? 109. Okay, that's about right. About 50% more. Exactly what we predicted. Okay, so now let me tell you what I've done. I've combined. You're going to love this. This is so fun. Okay, in fact, it's kind of addicting. Most recent copy, added back in everybody who was deleted, sorted by city, then by street name, then by address. So let's just look somebody up. Who wants to volunteer? Oh, I'll show you how this works first. Take the first one in the list. So Donna Diner. Do you know her?
It's a
Dina. She lives at 534 Adams Scenic Trail. Okay. And she was 65 years old as of 2020. Since I have multiple copies of the rolls, I just picked 1 year. So she's 71 now, probably. She's a voter. Boy, is she a voter. Her propensity, I've got 20 columns over here I can store elections in. She's got a perfect score. So she's a good voter. She votes like crazy. Sorry, let me change that. I did this all automatically and I haven't gone back and cleaned a lot of it up. So let's see here. She was registered to vote in 1991 in February. She voted in county in 2020 and looks like she missed the 2022 election. So I'm sorry. She had a good record going. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 copies of the voter rolls. And this is her status in each of those copies. She's active in each of those copies. So you can kind of see a summary of all those. Remember my favorite thing to do? Take lots of data and make it an easy way to look at it. That's what I'm trying to do here for you. So she's been active in all the roles. She votes a lot. She missed one election. Boy, did she vote a lot. She lives at that address with Michael. Given the ages, they're probably married. Right? They're probably married. They have the same last name, similar age. They both vote a lot. Probably married. Listen to the next address. Alan and Margaret, the same kind of age. Maybe it's an older neighborhood. I don't know. They vote very consistently. That's great. They're active in the role. So I don't see any problem. I don't see any problem with these addresses. Do you? I don't see any problems. Looks like they're in the roles. They're doing fine. But then let's just go down a little bit more. Do you notice I didn't pick and choose this? It's right at the top of the list, and we'll notice. So what about the next address down? We've got Michael Ray Buckingham and these people. He only voted one time back in 2016, and he was still active in the rolls in 2021, and they made him inactive, and then they finally took him out. But you'll notice they were all active at the same time for many years. My guess is he moved out in 2018, which is why I quit voting. So in other words, he was active in the rolls for many years, even though he wasn't there anymore. Remember what I told you about the churn? It's full of people that aren't supposed to be in there, and they linger, and then they finally get removed. And so that is why your rolls are dirty. So I said about 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 don't belong there. So I've got 1 on this page so far. Okay. I bet you we're going to find 3 or 4 more on this page, but just for fun, let's look up somebody's address. This is even more fun. Who wants to volunteer? Yes, sir.
1236 North Commercial. Same place.
Are you in Franklin County?
Yes,
North, maybe they spelled it out.
commercial.
North Commercial.
I'm sorry, 1245. That was my business address.
1245.
Yeah.
Maybe it was an N.
Take out the Northland wise.
There it is. So you're Douglas or Scott?
I'm Scott.
Hey, good for you.
So Douglas moved, that's my brother. He moved away from home in 1986.
Really?
And he was in Minnesota with my sister-in-law. So they didn't get
He was still active in 2017.
They have not- Well, I know that because I get sometimes where I have got the ID cards to go vote or the notifications for elections in his name.
He
That's
was
why.
active in 2017. So he was-
He was active in the rolls in 2017, but he moved away when?
1986.
1986. When I tell you that your voter rolls are dirty, I'm not kidding. And if I can pick names at random and keep finding this problem, you know it's everywhere. So let's say that I gave Scott a copy of his neighborhood. And I said, hey, Scott, do you know your neighbors? Do you know Brittany and Evan?
Yeah,
How come Brittany isn't in the rolls anymore?
she moved.
She moved. I guess they split up.
They're brother and sister, and then so Evan took over his mom and dad's house. He lived there, but his sister moved away with her boyfriend.
Okay, gotcha. And they haven't been voting since, right?
Yeah, those two may have never voted. I don't know.
And so he should already be inactive, and he's not.
So that,
Because he's missed 2 federal elections, so he should be made inactive, and he hasn't been. So
Another,
that's another example. And so what about, let's go another door down. Do you know the Bessons and the Sheltons?
Shelton's,
The Sheltons live there now.
yes,
Who are the Bessons?
I don't know. So what address is that? That's
That's 1445.
the same as Shelton's. Shelton's have been there for 6 or 8 years, because she's an Alderman.
Well, who are these?
And that's a,
Never heard of them. Am I making my point?
and they've been
Yes.
voting.
tell us how to fix it.
Tell you how to fix it. All right. So
Yeah.
what I'm gonna is, so I think I've done enough of this that you get the hang. And by the way, we're 2 for 2, right? Or right? You can look up a couple more. This never fails because you're not the only state that's got dirty voter rolls. Everywhere I go, doesn't matter who we pick, it's full of junk. Recently I was in a county, Jackson County, Oregon. No, it was Montgomery County. And I looked up, the first lady I looked up, she says, it says on there that I voted in 2020, but I didn't. I was taking care of my mother in Southern California. So that's a case of fraud. Somebody used her name and cast a ballot using her name. And that's the problem. If you have this list, which anybody can get, you can look at people who aren't voting and use their names and cast a ballot for them. And so when somebody goes to the polls and says, they told me I already voted, what was happening is they probably missed a couple elections and somebody noticed they weren't voting and used the name to cast the ballot and then it got caught. If that makes sense. Yes, Jim?
Including 85 or 86-year-old couples.
Oh, yes. Jim has the greatest story. And Jim, I use your story, as you know, all over the country, actually, because it's one of the best stories I've got to illustrate this idea. Let's just tell that story real quick. So Jim found a voter who was registered in 1964 and never voted. I'm going to find an example here. Where is it? Where it is. I'm looking. I hope I didn't take it out. Sorry, guys. I guess it's in another presentation. I'll just tell you the story. So, voted in another county. I was registered to vote in 1964. And it's too good of a slide. Oh, that's a good slide. Voted in 1964, registered to vote in 1964, never voted except one time in the 2020 election. Absentee. So Jim or the team went down to talk to the clerk and he brought out the absentee ballot application and he brought out the registration card from 1964 and the signatures are a pixel for pixel match.
Wow, their handwriting is still that good.
Your handwriting is still that good. So a lot of times people will say to me, well, they're using signature verification, Dr. Frank. Yeah, but you gave away all the signatures to the bad guys. So anybody who wants to cheat has all the signatures and they can digitally put them on there or they can just copy them close enough and it'll pass because nobody expects your 1964 signature to match your 2020 signature. If it looks at all remotely alike, they're going to pass. Yes, Jim.
And so the assistant clerk says, so then we're supposed to check to see if the signatures are too good of a match?
Exactly.
So well, obviously something's wrong.
Yes.
6 years passed.
There it is. I did have it.
And the second part is, the director of elections in St. Charles County, who goes by the name of Kurt Barr, said that it's perfectly reasonable that these two signatures were dead and unmatched.
This was from St.
So this is a make-believe illustration because we didn't want to give away the lady's name. But there's an absentee ballot application that's completed, and there's the registration card, and the signatures were a perfect match. So how can they be a perfect match after all that? So that means somebody is ordering absentee ballots for someone. Those ballots are being mailed. They don't even need to recover that absentee ballot. They can print all the ballots they need and just turn them in using that name. And that's what, guess where those ballots might be printed? South Korea, AWeB, and millions of those are being printed over there and shipped all over our country. This is a big deal. And the reason why they're having electronic communication is because they need to find out, okay, it turns out that Mabel did vote. Okay, so don't cast that one. They're tracking what's going on in the election throughout the entire process. That's why the machines are not good. It's true that the machines sometimes flip the ballots, but very rarely. It's almost always ballots being stuffed. You've all seen that graph that goes like this and then jumps and continues on. That's not flipping ballots. That's adding ballots. That's stuffing ballots. And all you needed to know at that point is and that graph is from Michigan. They added 156,000 new voters to the rolls and stuffed ballots for them. That's what they did. And I know I was in that lawsuit. We asked the Secretary of State to give us the list. The judge ordered the Secretary of State to give us the list of all those 156,000 people. She said, okay, I'll comply with the court order, but it'll take me 2 years to compile the list. And she never did. All right, so my brother here is asking the question of the day. All right, I believe you. What do we do? Yes? Have I made my point? What's the problem? The problem is your elections are not controlled by you, they're controlled by somebody else. That's your problem. So you got to get it back low. How are you going to get it back low? Well, a lot of people have tried, let's file a lawsuit. How's that working? It's not. Why is it not working? Most cases are getting thrown out because of standing. What does that mean? So let's say I go up to my brother and punch him in the nose. He might hit me back. Let's say I punch him in the nose and then you sue me for punching him in the nose. And you go to court, the judge will say, you don't have standing. He'll throw the case out. Who can sue me? He can sue me because I punched him in the nose. He was the one who was harmed. So in order for you to file a lawsuit, you have to demonstrate that you've been harmed. You have to have standing. You have to be able to show this caused harm to me, which is why I have cause to bring this lawsuit. Well, if you're like, there's a gal here, her name's Alice. She's really all about the machines, and that's great. I agree with her. We need to get rid of the machines. But guess what? When she goes to court and says we got to get rid of the machines, what happens? They tell her, you don't have standing. She needs to have standing. How can she have standing? She has to show she's been harmed. So if you want to go to court, I'm great with that, but don't waste your time until you have standing. I want to help you get standing. How can you get standing? You get standing by proving that there's fraud in your election. Prove every ballot that's cast fraudulently is nullifying someone's real ballot. You are harmed by that. At the minimum, it's diluting your ballot. It's not one man, one vote anymore. So that gives you standing. So you need to have actual fraud. Now, candidates have even more standing. So I'm always encouraging candidates after an election, you have even more standing than the average citizen because you have a right to challenge every voter in your election. And so you can, if you can prove that a bunch of people who voted in your election weren't allowed to vote, you even have more standing. So a lot of I think what's been happening is too many people have been spending too much time doing things that don't make a difference. If that makes sense. Too much energy is being spent on things. And I'm not bad mouthing anybody. I'm just telling you, we have to fight this like war. And as long as we keep fighting it individually and separately, we're going to keep losing. Yes, sir.
I'm afraid to ask this question because it may take you down a rabbit hole.
I'm good for that.
Okay. And you haven't really discussed any of the problems with mail-in ballots. Not that I was expecting you to, I'm just bringing up mail-in ballots.
You mean the 300,000 that were cast in your last election?
Yes. And one example I can think of specifically is Larry O'Connor, who writes for Town Hall Media and does podcasting. He moved from California 17 years ago from LA. He now lives in DC. He still gets mail-in ballots mailed to him
From California.
from LA
I know.
for every time.
Yeah.
And so if this is going on times thousands across the country,
Times tens of thousands.
that's sick.
We have the voter rolls for most of the states in America. And we have a guy, Mr. Liddell hired a guy who's sitting there cross-referencing voter rolls all around the country. We have found hundreds of thousands of people voting in more than one state. And it's not that they're voting. They moved away and somebody's using their name at the old residence. That's what's going on. And that's why having dirty voter rolls is a problem. You're giving the bad guys all the slot they need, all the wiggle room they need to cheat. And especially your mail-in voting is going up in your state. You need to stop that. You need to vote in person on election day and none of this early crap, none of this voting in stuff, mailing in stuff. If you can go to the grocery store, you can vote in person. So get it in. You know, stuff. We never sacrifice integrity for convenience. Integrity of your election is more important. You need to stick with that. So I've got the 7 steps. What's that?
One day to vote.
One day to vote on a holiday, so you can all help count it. That's I totally agree with that. So we need to be doing our job, but the problem is we've all gotten lazy. We're too affluent, right? Things are too good, and we all. I'm guilty too. So I have a pastor friend. He says he preaches to himself and he lets other people listen. So when I wag my finger at you, I'm wagging it at me too. Okay, I especially me because I don't think I was awake till 2020. But boy, did I come back from South Korea awake. Holy mackerel! I'm shaking everywhere. Wait. Okay, all right. So if you're waiting for Trump to fix it, ain't gonna do it. Everybody's hoping he'll sign some executive order. Are you kidding? It wouldn't last 5 minutes in court. Because the Constitution is explicit that the states control the manner of the voting. But he does have one thing he can do. His 83rd executive order gives him the authority to freeze the funds of everybody associated with an election if he has foreign interference in it. You go ahead and read the 83rd executive order. So he can essentially freeze the country and declare a state of emergency. I'll bet you dinner. That's what's going to happen in November. Okay, that's what's going to happen because he's not going to allow the Democrats to impeach him again. And all the numbers show that the Democrats are going to win the midterms. We're in trouble. And he's not going to let that happen. He'll freeze the election. So get ready. Are you ready for another summer of love? You know, you're ready for, it's coming, but he's not gonna fix it. There's no silver bullet, is my point. You can't just wait for the cavalry to come over the hill. You are the solution. And, one of my favorite gals, Chrisanne Hall in Florida, she wrote this book, Sovereign Duty. We wrote our Constitution because we didn't want to have kings anymore. We're the sovereigns, but we have duty as sovereigns. You know, what would you think of a king that didn't do his duty as the king? Okay, well, guess what? You're the kings. Start acting like it. We have duties. We need to be engaged. My dear friend in Southern California, Urson, he says we need to reintegrate our civic duties in our normal lifestyle. Can you imagine what it'd be like if every person just spent 1 hour a week doing something civic duty? You wouldn't need to have half the government services that are provided, right? Because, I would give an hour a week to cut my taxes by 20-30%. What about you? I would do that. So anyway, that's the idea. And then as General Flynn has been pointing out, that local action is how we have national impact. And this has a special new meaning to me, because what did he do for a living when he was working for the government? He arranged takeovers of other countries. He arranged the color revolutions of other countries. And guess what the subtitle of this book is? The Quiet Coup, the Color Revolution in Seoul. The NIS director, the CIA director, wrote basically how they are taking over the country. Guess what? Same playbook. And the same playbook is happening to us right now. So local action is the key. Too many people are doing things that don't make a difference. I always say they're on hamster wheels and go down that road. I want to get to the solution. Okay, I'm answering my brother now. So about 2022, when I wasn't having much success meeting with secretaries of states. By the way, I met with Jay Ashcroft extensively. We brought him lots of evidence, and he never dealt with it. That's a whole nother set of stories. I'm tempted to go down that road, but it's too much of a rabbit hole. Let me stay on topic. Trust me, he knows, and he ain't doing nothing about it. So, but in 2022, I was feeling pretty frustrated because I wasn't having any success legislatively or at the leadership. So I started looking around the country. What is working? What is not working? And I'm a scientist, right? So I gathered all my evidence and I organized it into an empirical description of what works. That's what this is. This is not me sitting in front of my fireplace one night with a pipe saying, I'm going to fix the country. How am I going to do it? No, this is me saying, I see stuff happen in the country that's working. What is that? And I organized it. So the first step is getting connected. So for example, today, hopefully I've red-pilled you a little bit. I've woken you up. You know things now you didn't know before, and now you're awake. So if you didn't get connected, you wouldn't know that. So you need to get connected with other people in the country that are doing this work so you don't repeat the same mistakes. And you know what's working, you know how to engage. So step one, get connected. Don't forget to sign up with Mike and Amy as you leave if you want to be part of this, because I want a team here. Let's get some teams in this county. Go. Next thing, get organized. Think of it like a war. If Canada invaded us today, what would we do? We'd all grab our guns and go fight, right? Except that's wrong. What we should do is come down here, put a map out on the floor and say, let's define our perimeter. What ammunition do we have? We need to plan. Let's decide how we're going to defend ourselves. And then let's find other counties that have done the same thing, and we'll combine forces and we'll drive the buggers back across the board, right? That's a warlike mentality. We need to think that way, and we haven't been. It's all individuals doing individual things. Well, that's how you lose a war. You win a war when you make the strategy and implement. So you get organized, and you need a team of 7 people. And I hate to say it. It just breaks my heart to say it. But teams are failing all over the country because they don't get 7 people on their team. And they think they can do it. I don't care how good you are. You're dynamo. You've got to have 7 people on your team because there's 7 tasks that need to be done. And they take a lot of time each. You can't combine tasks. So 7 tasks. You need a leader that'd be like the general. The general doesn't fight the war. The general stands back and watches what's going on and implements the strategy. Make sure everybody has what they need. Leader, you need a data person because I'm going to give you data. You need to be able to split it up and hand it out and help people understand what it means. You need a promoter. So we have an event today. Who promoted this event? You guys, huh? Yeah, okay. And good job. Good turnout. Good job. Especially on Sunday afternoon. Very well done. So what's your event next month?
Next month, we, are the amendments.
And you got it, so you got a couple of months, events planned in a row, an event? That's a lot of work, isn't it? That's why you need a promoter. You need bringing somebody every month to kind of generate the interest, to catalyze, to get volunteers, because you're going to be building a movement. And you don't build a movement unless you're promoting. You need to have a promoter for that. And I always joke about this, but it's the truth. How did it work out for Jesus when he went home to Nazareth? It was a pretty bad outcome, right? Remember, they wanted to stone him. So the point is, in my own hometown in Ohio, I don't have any election integrity going on there. They don't even want to talk to me. Nobody's interested in me there. And I'm the local schmuck, right? And so that's your problem. You're the local schmucks. So you need to make sure when you're planning your events, you're bringing in outside voices. You know, what do they call it? An expert is somebody from out of town with a briefcase, right? So you need to be bringing in outside voices to generate, and then every month you can talk about the fact, hey, we have an election integrity movement going here. And my favorite way to kind of make the community aware is to do stuff on radio, which is why I was happy to do the Rob Carter shows. And who was it? Nadine, I was on her show. And then I also like it when you print out, like, is there a flyer for today? I didn't see the flyer, but I assume there's one. Make 100 copies and hang them up in all the grocery stores. And not because that's going to bring in people necessarily, but because you're telling everybody we have an election integrity movement going here. It's like you're bringing up the public awareness of it. And that's what we're trying to do. So promoter, recruiter, you need to be bringing in other groups. Churches especially. If you can bring churches into your movement, that's a big deal. Churches have been building movements for 2,000 years. They're really good at it. We're trying to build a movement. You want to get groups. Yeah, Moms for America, I think that's very active here. Is it Moms for Liberty? What is it? Moms for Liberty. I drove around the state several years ago with some lady who's one of the heads of that and did multiple events. She was awesome. That was her. That's who it was. And we were doing multiple events. That group should be part of this. Why? Because they care about the issues that are decided by elections. So she should care about elections. So let's get those groups involved. We need somebody who's good at recruiting groups and promoting your message to them so that they want to join in our movement. Researcher, here's a question for you. Do you have to live in Missouri to vote here? Do you have to be a resident to vote?
So,
He says he hopes so, and other people nod their heads yes, but you need to read the law. Because the law doesn't say you have to be a resident here to vote here. In fact, you could have lived here 30 years ago and live in Europe now and one day intend to return and you can still vote here. We gave about 100 examples of that to Jay Ashcroft in a presentation to him a couple of years ago and said, how do you know these people are really submitting these ballots from overseas? He said, he doesn't know. It's not his responsibility to check. Whose responsibility is it to check? Nobody knows. So all these ballots are coming in and how do you even know if these are real ballots from real people? You don't know. This is a crazy system you have. If you were controlling it locally, you wouldn't allow that in a second. Somebody says, I want an absentee ballot. You call them up on the phone and said, are you really there? What makes you think you're entitled to an absentee ballot? Okay. Oh, okay. You live here. You own property here. Okay. All right. You're over there on an assignment. Okay, fine. Send me your ID. Send me a signature. Here's a form, and I'll send you a ballot. And that you can close the loop, and you can do chain of custody. But if your local people are controlling, and so that's why you need a researcher. You need to know the laws, because if you're the government, you should know your own laws. You're going to play a game of chess. You ought to know the rules. So that's researcher. Strategist. I was reading an article by Hatton the other day. He said you always do strategy when you're at war, but nobody ever used any of his strategies. And that's because the battlefield's always changed, but that's why you're always doing strategy. I was in chapter 12 of the Art of War, which I carry around with me. Talks about spies. Chapter 13 talks about how every war is won in a single battle from one opportunity and one piece of intel. And so if you don't have somebody standing back from the work, looking for opportunities, capturing intel and planning strategy, you need somebody who's not so busy that they're watching the field. That's your strategist. You need a strategist and then an archivist. The archivist collects the data. So I spent a little more time on that than I usually do, but you're going to put together a team of 7 people like this, and they're going to wage war in your county. They're going to come up with a strategy that fits your local situation. You have good sheriffs, you have good commissioners. Is this a county you think might be willing to take a stand with another half a dozen counties? Or is this a wimpy county? And they're not going to be willing to stand. And if it's not willing to stand, let's find a county that is. In Oregon, 36 counties, 25 of those counties that have a team in that's already been finding fraud. We're finding massive amounts of fraud. About a dozen of those counties are going to stand together very shortly, tell the state that they're not using their system anymore because it's unconstitutional and illegal. And they're going to save tons of money in the process. It's awesome. So they're going to do that. If you think about it, Oregon, think of it like a rectangle. Oregon's got these mountains going right through the Cascades. On the wet side, the Cascades, I've got a bunch of counties over there, but check out the counties on the dry side of the Cascades. They have 15 counties there. 13 of them signed a resolution. They want to secede from the state of Oregon. Okay. Those counties are pretty easy for me to get organized to tell the state, we're not going to comply with your stupid election system anymore. And in the process, we're going to save all this money. So in other words, a little research. Let's decide which counties are the best counties to get organized in this state. Instead of me just going where I'm invited, let's be proactive. Let's do strategy. So anyway, we're going to formulate a plan that fits your county. We implement the plan. And here I'll finish with this, because this is usually a 2-hour thing. We're going to build a movement. Let me just explain what I mean. I already said 71 team. So, well, this is a tweet that Trump wrote last year. We helped him in August. He said, it's a long essay. I promise I'm not going to read it all. This is a long tweet for him. He says, I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots. So that'd be about 300,000 of yours. And also, while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voter machines. That puts you guys right in the crosshairs, which cost 10 times more than accurate, sophisticated watermark paper, blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Linda Rance, for doing that study, showing that in your state, it's about a factor of 10 that you would save if you got rid of the machines. Mm-hmm. All of this is good. He's doing a great job. But the most important thing he said was, I am going to lead a movement. He didn't say, the SAVE Act is going to save you. He didn't say, I'm going to write an executive order that's going to save you. He said, I am going to lead a movement. He knows, and he's right, that the solution is not top down. The solution is bottom up. The solution is right in this room for your county. We need to organize locally, find fraud in our county, and have our county decide to opt out of this system. And then if you get other counties to join in on that, a beautiful example is what Linda Rance did in Osage County. She only had one county that did Haine County. That's failed. That's like sending one platoon against the German army. No, we need to invade Normandy. That takes infrastructure and planning and strategy, and we need to organize together. I'm not faulting her for that. I think we learned from that experience. Okay, we all learned. I'm not bad mouthing her. I like Linda. I'm the one who recruited her, by the way. In fact, I was in the administration building at the Capitol, not the main building, but the administration building with Jay Ashcroft, and I shook his hand in the hallway and said, "If I bring you 100 cases of fraud, will you do a statewide investigation?" And he agreed. And I was so excited, and I got up my phone and called my team that I had met with before, and my Missouri team, who had a fight in the meantime, and they were broken up, so it wasn't a team anymore. Does that sound like the grassroots to you? That is my biggest obstacle as I do this around the country, is the grassroots are fighting with each other. Exactly. It's like sometimes I feel like, imagine pretend I'm like a brigadier general out in the battlefield, and 2 privates come in. We don't want to fight the same foxhole anymore. He combs his hair on the wrong side, or I don't know what it is. Okay, I just want to point to my lieutenant and say, take these 2 guys behind the building and shoot them, okay? Because we're at war. We don't have time for this crap. You're going to lose your country if you don't engage this war. Okay, so we don't have time for this fighting amongst the grassroots. So we need to get organized and get our movement going. And the nice thing is that we don't have to invade Normandy without air cover. We have air cover. So as we're doing our grassroots work, we've got support from the top. which we didn't have the last 4 years, which we now have. So this is a big deal. This is our opportunity. I tell people all the time, and this is another 20 minutes and I don't want to go down that road. But I tell people all the time that Trump did not win the 2020 election. Everybody thinks 2024 election. Everybody thinks he won in 2024. He did not win. And the way you have to think of it is like this. You go to a football game and you're all ready and the other team shows up and they're all on crutches. Okay? You play that game and you win. You didn't really win. The other team lost. And I can show you all the numbers for the nation. The Democrats did not turn out for the 2024 election. Trump performed in 2024 just like he did in 2020. He turned out his base, and that's it. God gave us a miracle. God kept Biden alive so that they were stuck with Kamala at the last minute. She's the worst candidate in my lifetime, and the Democrats didn't even turn out for her. Nationwide, I can show you in every precinct across the country, they did not turn out for her. And so we won by default because the other side didn't turn out to play. Well, if the Republican Party is telling you is, oh yeah, see how we won this time? We're going to win again next time in the same way. Wrong. We have an amazing opportunity right now. It's like a window of time that God has given us. It's like a reprieve. That we have a chance to fix our elections, or to repair our elections, not fix it. We're going to repair our elections. We have to act now or never. Remember, politicians don't start parades; they join. So we have to start the parade, and then your politician will join. Remember what Denny said. What happened to everybody? He says they elected me, and now I have no support. What happened to all the grassroots? We have to. He can't do what he needs to do unless the people are behind him. He needs to maybe stretch things a little bit, but he can't do that without support of the people, or what will happen? They'll just throw him out of office and throw him in jail or whatever. He has to follow the law. Your legislators need to be held accountable, but they turn the cameras off when they vote. So you see where this is going? You, the people, have to do this. If you're waiting for somebody else to save you, it ain't gonna happen. All right. One more story and I'll call it a day. How many of you heard this story before? Okay, good. It's a good story. I'll finish with this. So I was up in northern Wisconsin. I was in a tavern. About 200 people in a tavern. Because out in the country, they don't have like meeting halls. It's a tavern. But that's okay. Taverns are great. People in a good mood. And the revolutions happen in the churches and the taverns. So it's good. So at the end of the meeting, people are coming up the center aisle to, talk to me, ask questions, do selfies, all that stuff. I love that. And this lovely couple comes up to me, older couple. She puts her hand on my shoulder. He puts his hand on my shoulder and she says, Dr. Frank, we want to pray for you. But I love when people pray for me. Okay, let's go. So she's a Pentecostal. So she doesn't just pray, she really prays. Okay. And she's like praying really loud. And as she gets really loud, everybody gets quiet. And so then people start coming up and they start laying hands on me. And it's like a prayer meeting. And like 20, 25 people all have their hands on me. And I love it. It's awesome. It's like an invitation at the end of church or something like that. But she was really going. She was starting to wrap up the prayer. She says, thank you, Lord, for giving us Dr. Frank, and he's fighting the evil Goliath of election corruption and government fraud. And Lord, we just thank you for giving him such a big slingshot for fighting Goliath with. And Lord, we just pray that you'll give him really big stones. That's what she said. And so, of course, this was in the temple, right? And so everybody's in a good mood. And so everybody wants to laugh. But we can't, because it's like a serious prayer that's been going on for multiple minutes. And it's like, so we're stifling our laughter and holding it back. And she brings the prayer to an end. She says, in Jesus' name, amen. And everybody's got contorted faces. And she looks all confused at me. And I said, you just asked God to give me really big stones. And she, and everybody's bursting into laughter. And she turned as red as your shirt. And she was just, and I spoke at a place in Michigan a month later. And she and her husband were there. And when I told the story, she raised her hand. Oh yeah, that was me. So I'm telling you, this is a true story. It really, really happened. It's a funny story, but it's true. And I had never thought of it this way. We have to have stones. We are at war. We need to have stones. I appreciate that prayer that she prayed for me. When David went to the battlefield, he didn't go to fight Goliath, remember? Originally, he went there to visit his brothers and to bring back news to his father. And what did his brothers tell him? You remember? His brothers said, go back to the sheep. David's like, no, there's a man out in the field insulting our God and insulting our nation. Get out there and take business. No, you're just a shepherd. Go back to the sheep. But he didn't listen. He went out there and stood in front of Goliath. And I love what he said. He didn't say, I'm going to whip your butt. He said, the battle is the Lord's. That was one of my favorite things about being in South Korea. I was surrounded by Christians fighting for their country. Wow. Let's capture that spirit here again, right? The Black Robe Regiment led the revolution to begin. That's awesome. So let's capture that. But anyway, so I know it's scary, right? It's scary. Goliath is big. The government feels big compared to us. But what did Jefferson say? Jefferson said, when the people are afraid of the government, that is tyranny. And when the government's afraid of the people, that's liberty. I don't think your government is afraid of you in Missouri.
They could care less.
Then you have tyranny.
We have tyranny.
And so you need to make them afraid of you. And I'm not saying you have to do that with guns, but you need to find a way to make them afraid of you. And, you know, a beautiful example of this, there was in New Mexico a few years ago, Governor Grisham, there was a school shooting, and Governor Grisham said, oh, we're going to put a temporary ban on open carry of weapons. And so the next day, a sheriff stepped up and said, we're not going to enforce that in our county. That's unconstitutional. Now there's 70 sheriffs joined in. And that's great that a bunch of sheriffs stood up for their people. But the beauty was a week later, and guess who just happened to be there? What is crazy? I'm always in the right place, right time. And a week later, 50 guys put their big, ugly guns on, stood on the Capitol steps and said to the governor, here we are, come and take them. Come and take our guns, right? The people nullified the unconstitutional order. You need to nullify the unconstitutional election system in your state. You need to take back local control, but you need to find your stones. You need to be willing to join other counties, and that doesn't happen willy-nilly. It can't just be one who gets all excited. We got to make a team. We got to fight it like war, or we're just going to lose. You got to find your stones. Right? You remember this kid, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It only takes a few of us. What did Sam Adams say? He says it doesn't take a majority to prevail, just an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. That's all it takes. All we need is a small team in each county, and we can win this race. And if you don't get involved, then you're going to suffer like Plato says, penalties for refusing to participate in politics. You end up being governed by your inferiors. And I don't know most of you, but I bet you any one of you would be a better governor than the one you have. Okay. And that's the problem. If you're not involved, then you're a victim of your own choices. You need to get involved. Will Rogers, there are men running governments who shouldn't be allowed to play with matches. Okay, so you guys have the power. You just need to remember that and engage. So how about if I end there, and thank you very much for your attention.
We'll take some questions, but before we get to that, I just want to tell everybody, Dr. Frank's doing this tour totally on his own dime. He's paid for his flight out here. We've been trying to help him along the way, pay for hotel and travel expenses. So if you feel moved to and you can spare a few bucks, please throw out some. I think Amy will find something we can throw it into.
You got a
Yep.
basket in the back.
Yep.
My wife thanks you for that.
Yeah.
When I told her it was only going to be 6 months that I wasn't going to be making a living, and she was okay with that, but it's been 6 years now. And I put a 0 on my tax return last year, so that was pretty spooky.
You reduced your taxes.
Yeah, I don't pay any more taxes, do I? Yeah, I've paid taxes for a few years, actually, so I appreciate that help. But anyway, I'm happy to take your questions, or we can go home, or whatever it is we're going to do now. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Just a couple, the Trump quote, I'm going to leave it open, when was that? Do you have a date on that?
August 18th, 2025, 7:17 a.m. It was on Truth.
Okay, and do you have any questions?
Sure, help yourself. You're on a roll.
Do the South Koreans embrace the term of Christian nationalists?
There's a connotation to that in America
Right.
that they don't even think about over there.
Yeah.
They think of themselves as a Christian nation. And I mean, I attended 2 church services, a Methodist church and a Baptist church, and I went to 2 prayer meetings, and they were amazing. The Methodist church I went to was like 10 minutes south of the North Korean border, and there were 7 services. That church has like 80,000 members, and when you're in that worship service, they're all clapping together, and it's like an amazing experience. They think of themselves as a Christian nation. That's why I played that message from John. He's like, thank you for coming to our country. Now I'm saved. Thank you for bringing us the Bible, and thank you for staying here and protecting us. They think of us as being there and protecting them, and they think of themselves as a Christian nation, which is why they see this communist threat as such an existential threat to them. So this whole idea of Christian national, that never even crosses their mind. They're just, that's kind of an American thing. And I think it's kind of a psyop, to be honest. I mean, I'm a scientist, I'm a Christian, and I can argue it to the dirt and I'll win. Okay? And I can, exactly. And so anybody who doesn't know that is ignorant. You can read history and you can read history of science, and they're absolutely compatible. In fact, modern science was invented by Newton, Copernicus, Galileo, Pascal, Maxwell, Faraday, Boyle. You want me to keep going? Okay. You want me to read quotes by those guys and how devout Christians they were? I mean, there's no incompatibility whatsoever. Anybody who thinks that doesn't know what they're talking about. Same with our country. Anybody who says this country wasn't founded on the Mayflower Covenant, for example, or just go ahead. Just read the Declaration of Independence. I mean, it's the whole thing is about how we've been endowed by our. But we aren't a country based upon godly principles. What is that? That's silly. So anyway, anybody who doesn't know that, I think this is a psyop to try to make us all politically correct. Which is why I left my church in 2018, because the pastor was saying, well, I was the music minister. They were saying, well, you can't have that song because that talks about the blood of Christ. Yeah, we don't want to sound like those evangelicals. So anyway, I could go on and on and on about that, but no. So I don't know. I think this whole public discussion about Christian, that's a psyop to divide us instead of, no, we're a Christian nation. Okay. Are we perfect? Heck no. No Christians are perfect, but are we a Christian nation? Yeah, we're founded on Christian principles. Any other questions? Good question. Oh yeah, you had another one. You know what? I love it. It's great.
Yeah. On a different angle about Scott Pressler.
Yeah.
Thrown out of the RNC.
Yeah.
And he tied it to the fact that Thune, you can address it.
Let me say something about TPSA. So when Charlie Kirk was a Christian man, a dynamic Christian man, I knew him and I loved him. He's a good man. TPUSA is not a Christian organization. Don't confuse the man with the organization. Okay. And that's especially obvious now that the man has disappeared. Look at the behavior of the organization. It's not a Christian organization. It's a political organization through and through. It's a political organization. Now there's a subdivision of that, TPUSA Faith, that I think is trying to be a Christian organization, and they're going, or at least a faith-based organization, and they're going around the country building youth groups and college groups and things. And I don't have any beef with them, but I have a lot to say about TPUSA. I think Turning Point is not a Christian organization, and they're the ones who are promoting Scott Pressler. And Scott Pressler is a flaming homosexual. So that should tell you right off the bat that it's not a Christian organization, because why would a Christian organization promote a flaming homosexual? And when I confronted him about it, they said, oh, but he reaches the young people. Okay, did I just make my point? Okay, so I don't, reaching the young people with the flaming homosexual is the right approach. I think. Now, I'm not saying I won't work with homosexuals, absolutely. If I'm in the foxhole shooting at the enemy and we're both shooting at the enemy, I'm good with that. But I've met with Scott, and that guy is lying to you. And we've just go on X and read all the criticisms. He's lying to everybody about what he's done. So, for example, he's claiming that he saved Pennsylvania, right? Okay, let's just give you an example of that. How he saved Pennsylvania. I know I've got this. Where is it? Maybe I just couldn't get my computer, so I'm a little lost. I think I've got it here. 2024 election. There we go. I'm just going to tell you because I wasn't ready. So this is a number of people who were registered to vote in Pennsylvania in 2016, new Republican registrants. Here's the number of people that were registered to vote in 2020, new Republican registrants. Here's the number of people that were in 2024. When Mike Lindell said, when Trump came out and said in 2024, March, he said, we're going to make the election too big to rig. I ran back to my hotel room, and for 2 days I calculated, because I have all the numbers. I've been doing this for decades, all the demographic numbers, all the population numbers. And I calculated that the best Trump would be able to do from 2020 to 2024, he would be able to increase by 3%, and 2% of that would be from population growth, and that's it. So in other words, he would be able to hold his own. So I called Mike Lindell and I said, tell President Trump to stop saying he can make the election too big to rig. He can't. It's diminishing returns. We've already got all the Republicans that are going to vote Republican registered. You might be able to get a little bit on the edge, but nothing substantial. We have a huge problem. We have too many fraudulent ballots in our elections, and the elections are too easy to cheat. He needs to stay on that topic. We need to address our elections. We have got to clean our elections. So Mike golfed with him the next day, told him, and you notice he didn't talk about it for about 5 months. He never said too big to rig again. Then he started talking about it again. When the Republican Party came in, and when TPUSA, we're going to register people to vote and we're going to harvest ballots. That's how we're going to make it too big to rig. They didn't. I can show you every state in the country. None of the states were too big to rig. They were all just basically where they were the time before, maybe a few percent up, but that was mostly population growth. So they didn't make it too big to rig. What happened is God gave us a miracle. I kept Biden alive, and they got stuck with Kamala, the worst candidate in my lifetime. And then the Democrats didn't turn out. So even when you add the fraud to their low turnout, it wasn't enough. And that's basically what happened. So I can show you all the graphs. I actually have it on my YouTube channel, whole discussion of this, where I show you all the numbers. So you can confirm that I'm not just lying to you. So why did I bring that up? What spurred me on that rabbit?
Scott Preston.
Oh, Scott Preston. I met with Scott Preston in Las Vegas at the TPSA National Conference. I was an invited speaker, probably will never again, last February. And they asked me to address all the county commissioners from around, all the party chairs from around the country. They had invited all these party chairs. So I got to do that. And I met privately with Scott after that. I said, Scott, this is what you're telling people to do. You're telling people, register people, but wait a minute, you have more people registered than you have people already. Okay, but anyway, go ahead and register people and then chase ballots. And then you're telling them to vote early. Okay, I don't mind you registering people to vote. I'm good with that. I don't mind you encouraging them to vote, but don't vote absentee and don't vote early. Vote on election day. And if you want to help people vote, encourage them to vote, but encourage them to vote on election day. Because if you vote early, the machines tell the bad guys that person's voted. And so the machines are giving away all the information necessary to cheat the election. Don't give them advance notice. Show up in person on election day. And when you walk in and they say, sorry, you already voted, you can say, no, I didn't. And I'm filing a lawsuit right now. I'm filing a claim with the sheriff's department that my identification was stolen. Don't give them slop room to work. All you're doing by voting early is, it's like going to war and tell the enemy when you're going to attack with how many people. It's a dumb way to fight a war. Don't give them any information. So anyway, he said, and his answer to me was, no, I'm gonna do it this way because this is what I'm paid to do.
Nice, corrupt. I'm a corrupt individual, is what he just said.
But Charlie was pushing that too.
Yeah.
Kirk, that was the exact same message. I mean, they had that all going in Arizona and we even at the time were like,
I stopped Charlie and tried to talk about it.
and he didn't.
And it didn't pan out, did it? I can show you Pennsylvania. The only reason Pennsylvania came out the way it did is because Elon Musk lived there for a month and bussed all the Amish people and Mennonite people to the polls. They can't drive, but they can ride. And so he was busing them by the thousands. Elon Musk was rounding them up. He lived there for a whole month. And the number of registrations went way down. Why? Because they've already got everybody registered. There's not much more you can do. It's the law of diminishing returns. You work harder and harder for a smaller and smaller return on your effort. What you need to do is repair your elections. And then you're stifling the fraud. And then you guys are 4-1 MAGA. I showed you that, right? I showed you guys 4-1 MAGA. Where's that nice spreadsheet I had out? Yeah. Look at these. I have here, this is the rate for every county. What the rate? Adair, 2-1. Andrew, 3.2-1. Atchison, 4-1. Audrain, 3-1. Barry, 4.5-1. The average for your counties is 4-1 MAGA.
Where's Jackson?
Jackson. Kamala won there.
It's a city, baby.
And look, and that's a big number.
That's Kansas City. Yeah.
What did
Yes.
Franklin show at?
But notice, what's that?
Franklin?
Almost 3-1. So, but notice that the average is 4. In other words, you only have a couple. The majority of the state is red. Why don't we get the majority of the state to organize and say, we're not going to use your stupid election system anymore?
So what are they using instead when they say that we're not going to do it? What are they doing?
Oh, how about Linda Rance? Bring her in and she'll teach you how to hand count.
We did, well, I know how to do that.
Yeah.
We did hand count.
What he's saying is to get out of the centralized.
Centralized,
vote
you can
rules.
get that.
Do your own local voter rolls and do your own elections by hand counting. That's like, then now you're in control of everything.
Because we hand counted Osage County. We were part of that.
Good, well, way to go. Thanks for that.
So
And how did that work out?
it was awesome. It was fun.
It was easy, cheap, fast.
Yep.
Everybody trusts everything, but it was only one county. Are they hand counting this year? What happened? State came down. Yeah, exactly. If it had been 20 counties instead of 1, did I just make my argument?
Yes.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to organize your counties. I love Linda. I'm not criticizing her. I recruited her, remember? Remember I told you my team had broken up? That's when I called Linda because I had met her at one of the conferences and said, I need somebody in Missouri. Will you help? She stepped up for Missouri canvassers. She did a great job. So I'm not bad mouthing her.
Because your point is just like you did with the $5 bills. You can count them by hand, you can count them by machine. If they're fraudulent, they're fraudulent. So,
That's only one part of the problem.
right.
The machine, the real part of the machine isn't that it's flipping. The real bad thing is that it's reporting. And so, and the electronic records of who's the poll books,
So they know what's available.
they know what's available, they know how many they need to stuff. You're giving away all the reconnaissance necessary. And I find, by the way, more cheating in school board races than any other.
Yeah. Not surprised.
And the reason why is because it's in the spring, the turnout's way low, the margins are tight, and all you have to do is cheat 50 ballots and you win. And so it's super easy to cheat, and you don't even need the extra wiggle room. There's so many names who didn't vote. And who checks? When's the last time you checked to see if the state recorded that you voted? No, nobody checks. And so, well, I'm about to give you data. You're about to be able to check, yes. See, if you had local control, you would notice this stuff and you wouldn't be putting up with this from the state. So my point is, I'm hard pressed to, okay, 1, 2,
You didn't have St. Louis County because that would be.
3. I'll give you that. 3, 4. Oh, no, that's
You do
3.
have-
That's 3. 3 counties are blue and all the rest are red. Out of 114 counties, 2 cities, only 3 are blue. Come on. What's wrong with the rest of your counties?
Whatever the three,
St. Louis?
Boone and Jackson.
St. Louis County.
So I guess it's 4. St. Louis City, St. Louis County, Jackson,
And Boone.
and I didn't mark Kansas City, so maybe it's 5. But the point is still the valid point. You've got like around 110 counties that are maggot out. Why are you tolerating this? You don't have to tolerate it. You just have to get organized. And I'm going to help you find fraud. And then you're going to go to your county leaders and you're going to say, you're using a system that's disenfranchising me from my constitutional rights, because every one of these fraudulent ballots is nullifying one of our real ballots. We don't allow you to use this system anymore. And if they say, oh, well, the state's making us. No, you don't have to comply with any law or policy that's disenfranchising you from your constitutional rights. In fact, you're obligated. Jefferson says it's your duty to not comply with any unconstitutional law or policy. And guess what? This is unconstitutional. But notice, I gave you the standing. I helped you to find the fraud that proves that this is real. That gives you the standing to be able to say we don't have to comply. Now, in many states, I also brought in Judicial Watch to sue the state to prove their voter rolls are illegal. We did that in Oregon, and the court ruled that they had to remove 800,000 people from the voter rolls, which is nice, and they didn't. And they used the dirty voter rolls in the most recent primary that they just had. So guess what? Every candidate now has standing. You used an illegal voter rolls to run my election. It's beautiful. So, but I didn't have a chance to sue you because Danny complied with the DOJ. When the DOJ asked for the voter rolls, he gave them to her. A lot of the states did not comply, but he complied. So we don't have a lawsuit to refer to, but we do have data. And I give you the data and show that your voter rolls. Why did he comply? Because he's good. He's an honest guy at heart. I mean, he has his drawbacks. I mean, I'm not a huge Denny fan, you know.
I understand what's strategic. What was he thinking? Like, what, it feels like that's just the way.
He's a Republican in a Republican state, and Trump asked him for the voter rolls. I mean, that's an open and shut question, right? Or the DOJ. If he was to say no, then he'd be grouping himself with Oregon and Maine and all the other blue states that have been saying no to the federal government. Why would he want to be associated with that? He wouldn't want to. And I was reading a hit piece on him the other day that's saying, oh, he gave away all our private information. Your state isn't giving any private information to the federal government that they already have. Okay. I mean, they already know your shoe size. Okay. It's not. There's nothing. That's all this liberal line. Sort of like the SAVE Act is going to disenfranchise our women, you know, because they aren't going to be able to prove they're citizens. What a bunch of BS. Yes, ma'am.
The corruption, I'm sorry, is way before the election.
We agree.
Thank you. My husband and I were at a Republican, it wasn't really a primary event, but those who were running into the Republican primary were there giving out their stickers and whatever. And we were backing a candidate that we wanted to see run.
Sure.
And we were told by an official of the Republican Party, we did not choose him. They choose. And you see on the ballots, right? So before you even go to an election, those names that you see have already been pre-selected.
Just like the Speaker of the House.
I mean, it's way before.
We agree.
These are good Republican people, right?
That could be an oxymoron.
So, I want out there not caring whether somebody says red or blue, because
I agree. It's not about red and blue. It's, are you standing up? If a candidate isn't talking about election integrity, I don't vote for him.
yeah.
Because that's the number one issue. That's the elephant in the room. When I was in that small room with Shane Scholler, remember? He was telling me exactly what you just said. Not only is there all these ballots being stuffed, he was saying he's been part of the discussions where they say, we'll give you that county if you'll give us this county, and we won't stuff there if we'll let you stuff. He was privy to all this predetermination, and you're never going to defeat that until you take back your own county and look at your own rules and control your own election.
I agree.
We agree. You and I are on the same team. Are you married? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm married 44 years. I'm just man. You did you. Ladies first. Ladies first, then you. Yellow shirt after that.
So ultimately, how do we get this back from the state? I mean, it all sounds great.
You have
It's a great.
ultimately how do you get it back from the state? The counties decide to run their own elections. And the state's gonna say, you can't do that. And, oh yeah, well, me and 9 other counties are all telling you we're running our own elections.
So the people through elections do this, or a commission?
Your target is the county commissioners.
So we're screwed.
Well,
No,
I don't think so.
if enough people show up at the county commissioner meeting and start showing real fraud and saying, we don't want you to use the system anymore, and they say, we're gonna keep doing it, well, then you recall them. Then you're gonna make their lives hell.
But the only flaw with that is Kehoe just appoints somebody worse.
Well, okay, but the point is, if 10 counties are doing it, that's a different thing than if one county's doing it. Jim has his hand.
You know, you guys go to your county and you're reading off these, you go to the county meetings like he talked about they're doing in Oregon.
Yeah.
You're reading off the fraud that you find. They're ignoring you, but all the counties around you are doing the same thing.
Yep.
But they're not ignoring them and they're saying, we're pulling our elections back.
Well, and then my thoughts are, they ignore you, you go to the sheriff.
Your sheriffs don't have as much authority, I understand, in this state.
There
There's
is a constitution.
there's someone,
Sheriff amendment that's on. We don't know when they're gonna put it on the
They
ballot.
most of them currently have statutorily have the authority, but that's what.
I like it when, I like meeting with the sheriffs because they're the constitutional officer and they're supposed to be interposing. But if you're waiting for the sheriff to save you, once again, you're looking the wrong way. You want your sheriff to stand with you.
Right.
And the people, right, which is why we're building a movement. You're gonna have multiple events, you're gonna create awareness, you're gonna show fraud in your county. Jim has been holding out the yellow shirt too, yes.
so what are your thoughts, please, on the Save America?
Save America Act. Let me answer that in a second because Jim, I think, was commenting to her, yes?
Yes,
So let that close, then I'll do that.
in Missouri, by Missouri statute, it's the clerk who runs the election in your county.
Right.
The commissioners have essentially no input.
But they have control because who pays their check?
They have, they're correct. But that's a fool's errand to expect them to do anything about the budget for the clerk's office. At least in the current.
Well, if 1,000 people stood there in their meeting and said, we want to do the elections differently or you're out, do you think they might?
Lord willing, sure.
Let's find the counties where that will happen. That's what I'm saying. That's what for years I was going where I was invited. The last 2 years, I only go where I decide. Because I'm targeting the counties, and you guys are a good county. I'm targeting the counties where I think have the best chance of success.
But to Camden, though, we have little success in that particular effort.
Yeah.
They're still.
They're not doing my 7 steps, are they?
True.
Yes. What always happens is I get people all worked up and I get them pointed in the right direction and I come back a few months later and they're doing something else. It's like, wait a minute, did we have a strategy or not? Do what I tell you.
Yeah, but I had to crochet that.
I had to crochet it. All right, the gentleman asked about the SAVE Act. So I'm not against the SAVE Act. I think it should have been a slam dunk and immediately passed. However, you have to realize that the minute it's passed, it's going to be challenged by multiple states. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, and many elements of it will be struck down by the Supreme Court because the Constitution is very clear that the states determine the manner of the voting. So it won't survive, is my point. So in terms, am I willing to engage the legal battle? By all means, let's engage the legal battle, but don't expect it to save you by November because it isn't gonna be able to. I think the best thing about the SAVE Act is it exposes how crappy our Congress is, that they didn't pass it immediately. Remember my graph showing the communists? They should have passed it immediately. It's an obvious, it's a no-brainer. The fact that the left and the communists in our country are able to convince us all that this is true, then we're going to be disenfranchising our women. That's just crazy. And so did I address it enough? Don't wait for the SAVE Act to save you. Save yourselves. And we'll, you know, it's like if you're walking down the street and there's some lady getting raped in the alley, you don't call the police. You rush in there and save her, right? Okay, and then you call the police, okay? You can imagine some ladies in the alley and I go over here and say, you know, yeah, there's a lady being raped in the alley. Yeah, I think, oh boy, yeah, they're getting her this way and this happening. No, you get involved. You don't wait for the government to save you. You get engaged. That's what our problem is. We're waiting for somebody else instead of us.
We have to learn how to be sovereign again.
There we go. Got to act like sovereigns. That's right.
And I'm not talking about.
You're wagging your finger at yourself.
I'm not talking about a movement. I'm talking about understanding what it means.
To be a government.
Make your own decisions
Yes.
and stand on what you decide.
Exactly. America is an experiment in self-governing. We just forgot.
Hey, Dr. Frank, I got
Yes,
a question.
yes, sir.
There was a handful of Secretary of States of various states across the United States.
Yeah.
And one part was Select Denny, who came to the White House to give security clearance.
Yeah.
Now, why would that be?
All of them went there. Why?
Yeah. I,
Why would Trump call a special meeting at the White House of all the secretaries of states? Let me ask an analogous question. Why did he take out Venezuela? Because why did he order the Justice Department to go into Folsom and Maricopa and see where this is going?
Yes.
What you need to remember is that in 2020, during the election, Trump was the president. The day after, he ordered the Justice Department to go across the country collecting all kinds of evidence, and the Justice Department did. But none of the state legislatures would stand up and defend the president. By the way, your legislature doesn't like Trump either. None of the legislatures like Trump. He's disruptive to them. They like their power structure the way it is. So none of them like it. So they weren't willing to stand up. So what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. They don't like Trump, right?
Talk about why is all this taking place?
Oh, yeah. Why is all this taking place? So what happened was we had tons of evidence, but then the Biden administration went in and all that evidence was sequestered. It's kind of like in that movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. Remember at the very last scene, they put the Ark in that crate and they hid it off in some warehouse somewhere. So all that evidence was gathered and just put away. And now it's coming out, which is why Trump has been bringing it out week after week, and why Kash Patel is showing this stuff. In other words, the public is being reintroduced to the fact that there was all this fraud in that election. We have the hard evidence to prove it. That's what I think that meeting was about. But also, Trump is taking proactive action against it. He got rid of USAID, which was the number one way that our elections were being defrauded. That's the number one source of money coming back into our counties. It's going out of the country and then back into our counties to steal our elections. That's with AWEB and all that. So that's why when he cut USAID, why that was important. Did you also notice that Trump cut CISA?
Yes.
Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. In 2002, the federal government passed HAVA, Help America Vote Act, which is where we don't want any more hanging chads. So we want all the states to switch over to electronic voting. But the states said, too expensive, we don't want to do it. So the federal government said, well, here's the money. We'll buy the machines for you. And then the states said, but they're not secure. We don't want that. The federal government said, no worries, we'll put in the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency to monitor all the networks and make sure everything is secure. And then that's how everything's been being hacked, by the way, those secure networks that aren't secure. Trump killed that agency this year. He killed CISA, he killed USAID. He took out Venezuela. He's taking out all the infrastructure that's been used to steal our elections. That's why I'm going to him and saying, we got to go to South Korea. We got to take out AWEB. That's home base. Let's take them out. And the South Koreans could sure use our help. And they're willing to fight on our side.
Be a shame if all their ballots went up in flames.
It would be funny. He says all their ballots went up in flames. The day after the election, there are all these bonfires all over the state that suddenly popped up. It's crazy. It's happening there. It's just absolutely amazing to see communism up front and personal. It was shocking to me. there were two limousines we were going around. We had two security guards at each limousine, plus a third car with more security. And we would go around the country, and I was watching elections. So like, you go up to a polling place, we'd get out of the car or walk up, and I wanted to see what was happening. We'd observe for a while, and we'd learn. Everybody in the room would pull out their cell phones, and they're all, and suddenly the police would start showing up. And as they start to get maybe 5, 10 police, security guard would grab me, we'd get in the car and go to the next place. In other words, this is a police state. It is a bad situation. I didn't tell you the history before, but this is a piece of information to help kind of connect it all for you. In 2024, the people there elected a good president. 2024, so fair election, and he was elected. He was never in politics before. He was a kind of a grassroots attorney. When he got into office, he discovered all this corruption in his state, especially in the elections, and he panicked. And he declared a state of martial law, emergency. And the army went into all these buildings, seized all the servers, seizing all the information about the election because he discovered that they were in trouble as a country. 3 hours later, the National Assembly met, overrode the state of emergency, impeached him as president. He's now serving 3 life terms in prison along with his senior military officials. And then they had an election in 2025, which was totally corrupt. And that's the one that put in the communist president. And so, in other words, that's the coup right there. That's the point at which they lost their country. And you know what? We had a coup in 2020. And we almost had a coup in 2024, except God gave us a miracle. And I think we're like toying with this. We're like tinkering with this. We're right on the edge of this. You know, I want to say we're lucky, but I know better. I know God has been like giving us a little reprieve here. So this is our opportunity. We're on that edge. It's spooky. Can you imagine? I'm sitting there in South Korea. I'm looking at hundreds of thousands of people protesting. And I look at the news that night, LA, their election is dragging on. They're still counting, and the street's completely empty.
Yeah, right.
Well, at least they know everybody voted though.
At least they know everybody voted, yeah. But I mean, it's like, what's wrong with us? People, the same thing is happening here, is happening there, and nobody's doing anything about it. I think that's why the news is stifling it. Yes, dear.
I think it's the third time I've seen you. I appreciate it. I would just urge everybody here, see a lot of thinkers that it's time to speak up now. Go to your churches, go to your small groups, go to your neighbors. What is everything? Our numbers need to grow. Use everything. These guys have been working. We got the data, we got this. We just need to spread the word. Pray to spread the word.
It's hard to see. Yes, I think we noticed too, a lot of people think, well, I can't do anything because I'm busy. I'm too old. I have grandkids. I have other obligations. But everybody can do something small. Like on our election team in Johnson, we have a 97-year-old woman. Why? Because she's lived there all her life. And I can go Virginia. This address, who lived there and who married, and I can figure out who. And she's like, oh, that's easy. That was Thomas. And we named this. And I'm like, great. She's like, oh, a bank, like a history bank. Just like, not to mention last year in the campaign, she used to always call, but she's like, I don't know how to use those cell phones. We taught her, and she's like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's just so easy. She said, she outdid everybody. I just gave her a cup of coffee and some cookies.
Good feeling. Yeah.
Look, but she did. It's 97, and we're so proud of her.
Yes.
I mean, she's.
Remind me of your name.
Virginia, you better hear this again this time.
Jen, thank you for that comment. At a lot of my I skipped over today, but at a lot of my talks, I bring this scripture up from First Chronicles, because it's exactly what you're saying. And God says, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. And that's a call to God's people. That's a call to our churches, right? But everybody always forgets to read that this is a conditional statement.
Yes.
if my people will do what? And what's the first one? And this goes to your comment. He says, if God's people will humble ourselves is the first thing. What is humility? Humility is to ask yourself, hey, God made me for a reason. This old lady, she may not be good at cell phones at first, but she's made for a reason and she has skills. So each one of us has a purpose. Each one of us needs to discover what our purpose is. What God didn't just make you willy-nilly. You were conceived. He had a plan for you. So, how do you know what that is? Well, what circumstances are you in? What gifts do you have? Everybody can be engaged.
Yes.
And everybody should be engaged. And there's 7 different jobs on that team. One of those jobs is going to fit you. And maybe you don't lead that part, but you can at least help out with that part. Whatever you're good at, be good at what you're good at. The thing that really bothers me the most about that scripture, though, we always skip over this one, but we forget about this one too. Everybody says, we're going to pray. Yeah, how about turning from our wicked ways? You got all this child sex trafficking going on. We got all these drugs. We got all these immoral things going on. We have to turn from our wicked ways. How can God bless us? The famous theologian John Calvin said, when God wants to judge a nation, he gives them wicked rulers. And
Being judged.
so here we are. So, maybe we can translate it. When God wants to judge Missouri, he gives you wicked rulers. I don't think he wastes anything. So I think each one of you has got something to offer. Everybody needs to get involved. And thank you for your comment. That was good. With the whole play. Yes, ma'am.
We are living in the days of Noah. Everybody's paying attention.
That's a great metaphor. Because Noah was telling everybody, the flood's coming, Here I am telling you, communism's coming. Communism's coming. You got to engage. Communism's coming. But, nobody's listening. Yeah.
The raindrops are falling. Yeah, they are.
Somebody's about to ask a question.
Kind of an aside, but can you give us the 2-minute debrief on Peace of Heaven?
Sure. So I've been traveling the country for quite a while, and I've come across this child sex trafficking issue, direct stories. It's just blown me away. I had no idea it was happening. If we have all this child sex trafficking in our country. I'm trying to find my slides for it. I have slides. I might have taken them out of this presentation. That's the problem. Okay. So I was telling a pastor in Central California one of my stories. I've heard several really horrific stories and direct experience with some. And he says, well, as a matter of fact, Glad Tidings Church, Central California, they said, we're going to buy this former women's prison for $4 million, and we're going to convert it over to a place where it's protected, where we're going to take children that have been sex trafficked and provide a place, a heavenly, nurturing place where they can get back on their legs and whatnot. And he says, I'd like you to serve on the board. And so I've been serving on the board of this. Now, last year, it's not just me, it's me, Mary Flynn, Mike Flynn's sister, and several other prominent people in the country were on the board. And we had a big conference last year. It's called Rev 17, Revelation 17, taking on the horror of Babylon. That's what we did. And who trafficked in humans. That's why we brought that up. So we raised $4 million and we bought the property. But we had a lot of trouble buying the property. It took us about 6 months to finally get the property because the city didn't want us to do it, and they changed the zoning on us. And so we were like, well, if we buy it, we can't use it and all that. And it's a long, long story. So we were going to have another conference last month to kind of update everybody on it. And glad he left. We're going to update everybody on it, but we're just behind where we wanted to be. We got, instead of paying $4 million for it, we got it for $1.2 million. So that was like what Satan meant for bad, God meant for good. So we got it. So we saved a bunch of money. So actually what we're thinking of doing is selling that property now and buying another property with the profit we made. So, but it's kind of in limbo a little bit because of that, but I appreciate that. I'm glad he left the room. The first thing that we have to do with these kids, these young kids, they need reconstructive surgery. These kids have been sex trafficked. in multiple places. It's just horrific what's going on with this. And it's not just kids coming from other countries. It's our own children from our own neighborhoods that are getting enrolled in this. So anyway, this is a big problem in our country. It's way more prevalent than I ever dreamed. And it's actually larger than the illegal drug industry now in America. Child sex trafficking is now a bigger business than illegal drugs in this country. It's a big deal. So so let's say we put an end to it. What do we do with all those kids and Mary Flynn, the place we first bought, we were going to be able to handle 250 children. She said, the problem is, she said she could have us full in 2 months. So, this is a big issue. To give you one example, I was in Indiana. I was speaking at a small church out in the middle of the cornfield. That's most of Indiana. It's small, and I was meeting beforehand with the pastor, and he said he's a half-time parole officer, half-time pastor. And he has like 20 cases at any given time. And he said out of his 20 cases, 18 of them were former child abductors that are out on parole. And I said, wait a minute, they're abductors. Why are they out on parole? I asked him, what's the recidivism rate? 80%. And I said, well, wait a minute, if you just let 18 of them out and the recidivism rate's 80%, you just guaranteed a minimum of 14 children are going to be abducted. And he said, no, it's way worse than that. What do you mean? He says, well, 20 years ago, these guys, these perverts would, kidnap some kid and do whatever it was going to do, and they'd bury him in a forest somewhere when they were dead. He says, that's not the way it is anymore. They've had years to think about it in prison. Now they come out, they plan their abductions carefully, and when they're done with whatever they want to do, they sell them into the black market. They're worth $5,000 a piece. So what happens is these guys make a living, and they plan each abduction carefully. They don't have to be willy-nilly. They don't need a job. This is a full-time job for them, and it's tax-free income. They do a couple of times a month. And he says, we won't catch them again probably for a year or two. And so it's not just 14 kids. By letting these former guys out, it's hundreds of children are likely to be abducted by just the group that he's managing. And that's just one parole officer in one part of one state. It's like, and these guys, they just sit by the playground and watch the kids playing. And when mom's looking at her cell phone or reading a magazine, suddenly she looks up, what happened to Junior? I don't know. Never to be seen again. And that is real, and that's all over the country. It's when I was in South Korea, I keep getting Amber Alerts on my phone, and I asked, what are these Amber Alerts? They said, what's happening is the CCP is coming down and abducting people, taking them back to China for organ harvesting.
Because they know all about their DNA and everything else.
Yeah, it's funny when you vote there, you don't just sign in; you give a thumbprint.
Where at in
South Korea.
They're monitoring everything everywhere. It was kind of weird. There's cameras on every corner.
Do you need data centers for that?
You need data centers for that. Huh. And it's kind of Orwellian, you feel like everywhere you go, Big Brother's looking over your shoulders. It was a little creepy in that respect. But anyway, I'm rambling now. So thank you for the update on Piece of Heaven. I don't make any money, as you guys know, but I donate $100 to them a month anyway, because we are going to be nurturing children. I think our first batch, we're working on it right now. We're going to buy a house in a nearby town. I don't want to say where, and it's going to be able to handle 12 mothers with their child. A lot of these children enter into that market because a prostitute will have a child, and then that child ends up in that market. And so what happens is when a prostitute goes pregnant, she'll be like, I don't want that to happen to my kids, so she wants out. So we have a place where we can take them and rescue them, and we're working with the police in Sacramento on this. So we'll fill that up overnight. And so we're going to set up one of those in the meantime. So it's not that we're not doing anything. It's just that it was legally a mess. It's crazy. And what the devil meant for evil, God meant for good, because we suddenly have a windfall of $2.7 million, which was pretty cool. Because It was on the market for 17 million. We offered 4 million. And then when they changed the zoning on it, we had made a $600,000 deposit on it. When the zoning changed, we said, we want to get out of it. Give us our $600,000 back. And the seller said, what would you give us? And we'll sell it to you. So we offered them another 600 and they took it. So we got it for 1.2 instead of 4 instead of 17. It was awesome. So now we just got to find a buyer for it who will use it for the zoning purposes, and we can easily clear millions of dollars. That's pretty cool.
Did a lot of good work with it.
Yeah. Anyway, long answer to your question, but a good, it led to the whole discussion about the other. You know, that movie Sound of Freedom where they were importing the children? That's real too, but that isn't the majority. The majority is abducted from within our own population. And they're typically not, you know, the most affluent neighborhoods where we keep eagle eyes on our kids. It tends to be the, you know, if you were in a wealthy neighborhood and somebody abducted your kid, that would make the news. But if you're in a lower income neighborhood and some kid disappears, you know, people, I'm sorry, but people just don't pay as much attention to that. Yeah, so that's where that happens.
Because even, I mean, probably everybody in the room remembers the whole Sean Hornbeck and Ben Owensby.
Yeah.
It's just that one guy here that.
Well, any other questions for me? Hopefully I didn't talk your ear off too much, but you can tell God made me this way. I could talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. God made it that way. Yes, ma'am.
I work, the elections here in Franklin County.
Thank you.
And, in the past elections that I've worked. it
You work at the polls?
Yes.
Okay.
It shows the number of people in my polling area.
Good.
And, you know, it's like, we only see maybe 20% of the total people.
Especially in the midterm, especially in the spring, right?
It is time. I mean, even if it's a bigger one, you never see big numbers. So, but your stuff you showed in the screen showed the polling looked good. So are those fraudulent numbers already in the system at the time?
You're saying voter turnout?
Yes.
So
That's gonna be a voter turnout.
it looks like you had about 5 out of 7. So I would say that'd be about 70% turnout.
And I never see those
But
numbers.
that number, when the voters went out there, 18%.
Yeah, 17-20%. I mean, people always low.
Yeah, how are they getting 17?
Well, this was the 2020 election. I didn't put the numbers up for each election in between. We could go look those up for you. But I did give the graph, didn't I?
Yeah.
I showed the graph in your county. Let me bring that back up again. I had that here. See, it'll be right up here this way. File, and then we submit. There it is, my count. There it is. So you want to see Franklin. That would be quick, but it's a lot. There we go. Oh, what's your?
It's fine.
There's Franklin.
Okay, so what was the last piece there?
So your turnouts look to be of registered voters, about 60% of registered voters in the general, and in the midterm, it looks like it's about 50% of registered voters.
It's 30 out of 60 here.
I mean, I've only seen
So-
my polling place.
Yep.
You would think it would not be that far off from the other county.
Well, it kind of makes sense to me that you're only about 20% because this is the midterm in November. And I know that the primaries are even lower. So if it was down here, that is about right. 20 or 30% of your, right? It's about right. People are not turning out to vote. What if you let everybody count the ballots with their own hands? You might get a higher turnout. People might want to get involved.
We can't convince Tim Baker. He's just not interested in it. He spent all that money on these machines and he wants to use them.
Right. I don't mind using the machines. You can use them afterwards as a double check. When I go into the, you know, some people donate money to me, right? People donate me.
He says it will cost too much to pay you to do it.
It's 10 times cheaper when the rent's already did it. So, you know, you go to the bank, I have a stack of bills because you guys donate. Thank you very much. And I count them out in front of the clerk, the bank teller, right? And then she counts them out back to me. Right? And then after she counts them out, what does she do next? She walks over to this machine behind her. And she goes, and puts it in and goes, so it got counted 3 times under a camera.
Yes.
We know how to do this. There's nothing hard about it. So why can't we do that? Banks have figured it out. We know how to do that too. And I'm not against the machine, but do it later. Do it the next day as a follow-up. Because if you do it on the day of, you're giving away the information about what the tallies are.
But are you expecting 100% agreement between the machine and the hand counting? Because the
It
machine,
better be.
no, because the machine cannot do voter intent.
That's true too.
That circle.
You
perfect.
win that argument.
Yeah,
You win that argument.
How would you save any money?
right.
Right. And
Wouldn't save any money then, because then you'd be paying to get the machine out and all that.
might as well just get rid of the machines altogether, huh?
There we go.
And then
Where-
we'd save a lot of money that way.
Make prison bars out of them, that's what Mike
Yes, that's what Mike
says.
says. So Mike says, we can get rid of the machines, just melt them down, make them into prison bars. If you think about it, most of the counties, I bet you, I don't know how many, but I would make you a bet, a third of the counties don't even run the machines themselves. The clerks hire it out to somebody. They contract somebody to come in and program because they can't even do it themselves. Why is it so complicated? It should be, a high school kid could do it. My dream, if I could like wave a magic wand and take over all of our elections, would be to have the high school seniors count the elections. Because they could do it as part of their government class. And guess what? You'd be teaching them, hey, this is our country, and maybe they'd want to vote in the election because you just got them all involved and engaged. That'll be, and everything under cameras, adults supervising, and that, you just have a legal holiday and have fireworks and hot dogs and apple pie. Yes, sir.
So not only do they hire a separate company to lead the program and tabulate.
Because they can't.
They hire another person from that company to come in the evening. I know for a fact in Charles County does this. So the person is hired from Atkins, which handles the Unison machine, which we use here in Franklin. And that guy sits there at the laptop at night, taking the USBs from all the tabulators and sticking them into the laptop so that the Unison/Atkins software can run to tabulate the votes. And with the clerk isn't even doing that. They take them like
Somebody else.
third party to do that, which they have no idea what these guys are doing. What their backup is. Second thing,
That's called chain of custody. Go ahead.
Rob mentioned last night on the,
Bob Carter.
yeah,
Yeah, I saw you on there. I know. I called you out.
on the live thing about, what happened here in December.
Yeah.
Sid Baker had the Unison machine.
Oh, yeah. And they couldn't determine voter intent. And that's what I just said.
Talk about that.
Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so I was just wondering how many people here were at that
Yeah.
presentation. So, yeah, they couldn't.
The machines you're using are against the law. You just proved it. So why are you using them? You don't have to use them. They're illegal.
So the machines had about, at least approximately 70% error rate.
At least.
They hand marked the ballots in it, actually, they knew what the real tally was.
Sure.
They compared it to the machine, and some of the races on that test ballot, the error rate was 70 or percent.
70.
One of them, I think, 50. And the machine just gave no indication that there was a problem.
Right.
Because this particular vote for that particular race.
No, if there's a problem, you can send that out.
Well, you would think if you're gonna do it by machines and so on. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, they can do that.
the requirement for the bubble is it has to be 85% or greater filled without going outside the lines.
Wow.
That would be a stray mark, and then that's an overvote, or, it could be an overvote. It's not capable of accurately determining the voter intent.
So I agree with you, and you just proved that your machines are illegal. So what are the possible remedies? The county can go back to you and say, we agree that machine's illegal, so we're gonna raise your taxes and we're gonna buy a new set of machines that can tell the difference, okay? So that's why I don't like the argument attacking the machines. Do we want to get rid of the machines? Yes. Am I against the machines? Yes. But if you only go that way, you lose the remedy, because they'll just say, you're right, these machines are illegal, so we're going to buy new ones that aren't illegal. You don't win that way. We're fighting a war, remember? We want our battle to produce the win we want in the end. So Mike and I are friends. I would never, Mike Lindell, I'm an anti-machine guy. There's no question about it. But this is a question of strategy. Sort of like saying, I want to kill Hitler. Absolutely. Let's get him. But I'm not going to do it on the first day. I got to get to Normandy first. I got to do a target that's achievable, that enables me to take care of that one. And taking back local control of your roles is something you can do immediately, easily, and it dramatically affects the enemy's ability to cheat. And then you could do a hand count at that point and then follow up with the machines that fill in. That day I was in the Capitol. I didn't say much about it. In that administration building off to the side, when I made the deal with Mr. Jay Ashcroft. It was a room about this big, but it was turned this way. And the screens, there were two big screens up there. And Mike was sitting there and I was sitting here. And there was Jay Ashcroft, two of his aides, Eric Schmidt, two of his aides. And Kurt Barr was right over there, since you brought up Kurt Barr. And about 20 other clerks. And they were all in the room. And Mike and I were presenting evidence about your elections and fraud in your elections. I don't want to give away any other names other than that for right now. But what happened was the White Hat hackers started showing the passwords of all of the guys in the room, of their voting machines, and that they could go online. And this one guy said, well, I want to get rid of this voting machine. Or actually another guy said, he was sitting over here. He said, how do you prove that this machine is online? And Mike says, well, we'll just get a screwdriver and open it up right now. And the guy says, well, we can't do that because if we open it up, it breaks the seal and we have to buy it. Mike took out his checkbook and said, how much? So he was going to buy it on the spot. And then Ashcroft stepped in. I think it was Ashcroft said, now, wait a minute. We can't do that because we have a contract that we can't open these machines. I have a contract with the supplier. So we didn't actually open it. And then I butted in and I said, yeah, but I can still prove the machines can go online. They said, how? I said, all you need is a forensic imaging device. And I was bringing it up on Amazon and I showed it on the screen. So we can buy this. Mike ordered it on the spot, okay? And we shipped it to you so that you could plug it into the machine and it would do a BIOS backup and back up everything about the machine and tell you everything about it. Well, we shipped it to them, but nobody ever used it. And the reason they had never used it, I think, is because that's what we did in Tina Peters' case. And they didn't want to beat Tina Peters. They're afraid that'll happen to them. But anyway, so while all of this was happening, and you're showing passwords on the screen, he said, well, my passwords weren't up there. It's kind of cocky. And then Mike and he started fighting and they were cussing at each other. It was very unprofessional. But it's the most I've ever seen Mike lose his temper. He was like, this is our country. I don't want to use the words, but it was dirty. And they were cussing at each other and fighting and screaming. That's when Jay Ashcroft stood up to walk out of the room with his aides. And that's when I went out in the hallway and made the deal with them. But then I came back in and they were calming down. And so the lights went off in the room all of a sudden. And the guy, the White Hat hacker we had on the screen who was showing the passwords, he said, did the lights just go off in your room? And I said, yeah, how'd you know? I said, he was hacked into the administration building remotely and he was turning the lights on and off. He could control the whole building. He was hacked in. And then he showed Kurt Barr his passwords a little bit later. So yes, everybody's totally hacked. It just, they didn't know. So we were like, we're rubbing their noses in it. And they still wouldn't fix it. But that was still back in the day. We thought we could, this was late in 2021. We thought all we had to do was just show them that it was real and that they would address it. But no,
You thought they cared.
yeah. And you know, if I was going to give the other side of the argument, they might care. But here's another story. So I was in Louisiana at the GOP in 2022, state GOP. I was invited to be a keynote speaker. It was the week after the movie 2000 Mules came out. And so everybody was talking about election integrity. And so they made the theme of the Louisiana GOP that year, election integrity. Well, instead of 500 people, 12,000 people showed up. Okay, because everybody was interested. They had to move the venue over to the Cajun Dome. It was awesome. So the first speaker on Friday night was Kyle Ardoin, their Secretary of State. And he said, yes, we're the gold standard in the world. I'm president of the United States Secretaries of States Association. And we have the most secure networks in the country. We have the most secure elections in the country. And, you know, he talks for like 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, standing ovation, thunderous applause in the Cajun Dome. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo. And then I was next. And so I got up and gave them about an hour of all the problems in their elections and showing fraud that we had already found, et cetera, et cetera. They liked my talk. Standing ovation, thunderous applause. Next day, they have all the breakout sessions and people were coming to me throughout the day. Dr. Frank, how can you be right if, Collard, isn't he the Secretary of State? Doesn't he know? So it's like, what's going on here? Would you be willing to meet with the Secretary of State tomorrow? Yes. So I spent all day Sunday with Kyle Ardoin in a private residence with witnesses, hacking into every parish in his state, showing how it was totally vulnerable. Now, at the end of the day, Kyle looks at me and says, what do I do about it? He did care. What do I do about it? And so we downloaded the laws and read the laws in his state. It turns out he has the legal ability to decertify the machines. So we agreed he was going to decertify all the machines in the state of Louisiana because they were all hackable. And then they were going to have to run their elections by hand in November. I called up Mike Lindell. He's like all excited about it. This is great. We got the president of the National Secretaries of States Association that's going to decertify all the machines in Louisiana. He's going to make a big public announcement. This big. Looking good, I knew you would. That's what he said. Okay, so Friday comes around when the big announcement is supposed to happen. No Kyle Ardoin. Nowhere. We called his office. We called his house. We drove around. We scoured the government buildings. We couldn't find Kyle Ardoin. We couldn't find him for 2 months. We thought somebody took him out. The election happened. A month later, Kyle Ardoin pops up and he's got the certified results for the election. He announces the certified results. A month later, my team caught him in front of a television camera. Said, hey, you met with Dr. Frank the day after the GOP and you agreed that you were going to decertify all the machines. How come you didn't do that on television in front of everybody? News conference. Kyle Ardoin said, I don't know what you're talking about. I never met with that guy. Who's Dr. Frank? Never met with him. So we collected affidavits. The guy that picked me up at the hotel, where they dropped me off, the lady who was the host there, the people that brought lunch, the people that picked me up, the people that came and visited in the afternoon. We had about a dozen affidavits, sworn affidavits for people who had witnessed me being there with him, witnessed what had happened, et cetera. We documented it all. We visited him at his office the following week. He resigned the next day. So he might care, but maybe somebody's got something on him. Maybe they've got control of him in some way, or maybe they threatened to like rape his wife and chop her up to pieces or whatever. I mean, these people are serious. This is a big deal. So I don't know. In South Korea, the guy I arrived with, Morstan, the former ambassador, he's under a travel ban. He can't leave the country right now. I think I mentioned that before. The reason he's under a travel ban is because a year before he'd given a press conference in Washington, D.C., where he talked about some evidence against their current president, because we were looking for ways to get rid of this illegitimate president. Turns out this guy has a sob story about, yes, he came from an underprivileged family, which is why he never graduated from high school and all this. Turns out he and a bunch of other boys at the privileged prep school raped some special needs girl and they were thrown out, which is why he doesn't have a high school diploma. We have all the evidence. So when Morstan, that's the ambassador, when he read that into the public record, 3 days later, the principal of that school turned up in a lake with his arms and legs cut off. These people don't mess around. They're serious. And so that's why on the one hand, I think some people do care, but they're afraid.
They know where your grandchildren get off the bus.
They know where your grandchildren get off the bus. And I think there's some fear, which is another reason why we will never win until the people are all rising up. When the people are all underneath Denny, and the people are all underneath supporting your leadership, then they're less vulnerable. If it's just them standing alone, they're vulnerable. So I think that's what we're actually fighting a war. I like Denny. Is he perfect? Probably not. I don't know him that well to know, but I like him. I think he's a decent fellow. And I've been going around the country telling everybody we only have 3 good secretaries of states. And I list him in that list. He and Chuck Gray from Wyoming. And then we just got Scott Peterson in Nebraska. By the way, I forgot to mention it.
Yeah.
In the car when I was doing the table to show all, what the churn was in every county. This, where I was showing what percent churn there was in every county. You're like an average of 110%. What's the average in Nebraska? 32%. Are your populations churning more than the people in Nebraska? 3 times as much, apparently, in every county. Something's wrong with that, huh? Nebraska doesn't use ERIC. You use ERIC, or we're using ERIC. About a dozen states got out of it because they have the dirtiest voter rolls in the country. You were hiring out to an outside company to clean your voter rolls for you, but you have the dirtiest voter rolls in the country.
Eric Schmidt do that?
Eric was doing ERIC, election registration.
Yes, it's Eric Schmidtling that in.
I can't remember.
Say again.
It was been in for a while.
It's been in for a while, yeah.
So now they've got some new system, right? Or they're saying they're going to.
General, yeah.
Any system that's not local control, I have no trust in anyone. All these graphs for the counties, I have them online, so you can go to my YouTube channel. I did put that up, didn't I? If you want to follow me, this is how to follow me. You just bring that up. Take a picture of this, and because I'm always posting where I'm at, what I'm doing. Take a picture of that. My YouTube channel has got all kinds of information that you'll find useful, I think. I don't make any money on that channel. I used to, before they took me down, and I had to start over again. But it's a good way to get you information. Everybody can get to YouTube easily. If Mike and Amy are great, but if they don't call you back when you ask when you want to get involved, obviously I'm not complaining about them. They're great. But if they don't call you back, you can send me an email down here, and I'll call them up or I won't need to do that. I'm just being place. But if you need to get a hold of me, that's how you get a hold of me. But I'll just tell you, I said it last night on the Rob Carter show. I do this every day all around the country, and I haven't run into many people as active as Mike and Amy. I'm really proud of them. They're awesome. So I they can drive me around all week. I appreciate it.
It's not, everything's starting to get a little blurry.
Yeah, very good. But I appreciate you guys. They drove me around all week. So in public, I'll give you my thanks. I think we're going to get several teams out of this. I think so. You just need a bunch of teams because you need a team in every county because the counties need to work together, and to get them to work together, we need coordination from teams, and let's find fraud. I'll help you find fraud. I'm going to give all the data to Mike so he can give you the data for your county, and that's how we're going.
Awesome.
I have a sign. I need a pen. My pen ran out.
Your pen ran out.
Get it.
I'm checking Rob's pants.
I know. I was gonna text Rob and go, isn't that ironic? I just went to do that. And this is the best pen ever.
It's going to be start. I tell lots of stories, but they're first-hand stories. I think if you like.
And then don't forget about these steps.
Step 6.
So we got some of the printouts if you guys want to take them on the 7 steps.
You want to take it?
If when you get your groups going, we'll send you more information. So
My email's on the back there.
Whoever needs.
I'm also promoting Cause of America there. And I admit that it's a little defunct right now. Mike ran out of money. And so he hasn't been able to fund it like he used to. And he's running for governor right now in Minnesota. So he's kind of busy. But we've still got a few key people at Cause of America that are working hard and could give you support. So I would encourage you to still sign up for Cause of America as well. You just may not get support as quickly as you might have otherwise. But I'd still encourage you to do that.
but if we get several groups going, you'll be able to call us, and we'll be able to put you in touch with other groups that have people that can answer those questions and that's a whole
Yep.
organization figured out.
I've got about a dozen counties right now in Alabama doing this. And about 10 in Wisconsin, 25 in Oregon, 8 right now that are almost public in Colorado, if you can believe it.
Holy smokes.
Colorado. And so, and what's cool about that is I chose the southern part of it. It's called the San Luis Valley. There are 6 counties there. And man, are they conservative, and they're linking elbows and they're ready to stand. And then the wealthiest county in the state, I think it's called Douglas County, they love the idea of saving money. And so They're on board. And then there's another county that already started cleaning their own voter rolls, and he quit the County Clerks Association in Colorado. And so in other words, we have like a movement happening.
Get rid of that.
They're like, how could you think that happened in Colorado? It's why, because the pain level's higher.
Yeah.
And you guys are a little too comfortable here. As it keeps getting more and more painful, then you'll become more and more active.
And maybe they're not as blue as we think they are.
Oh, no, they're like Oregon. Everybody thinks Oregon's blue. 30 out of 36, red. Yeah, really red counties, same with Maine, the state of Maine. It's amazingly red. There's just a little blue dot in one little corner. That's it.
So that's where all the population is.
Yes. And so the tiny population's controlling the whole state. All they need to be is organized, so I'm organizing them. Same with you. You're even more obviously red. I don't think I've been in a state this red.
Probably not.
You guys are like, why are you tolerating this?
Well, that's why we have a super majority.
Pleasure being with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hard to stop, isn't it? There's lots of good stuff to talk about. Mhm.